right, we have Commissioner Colo. Let the record show he was 32 seconds late. All right, I'm going to call the Monday, October 26, 2020 Royal Oak City Commission meeting to order. We're going to begin with a roll call. Commissioner Colo. Commissioner Colo, can we do another check on that audio? I'll come back to Commissioner Colo. Commissioner Dubuck. Commissioner Macy.
Here.
Commissioner Lavasser.
Here.
Commissioner Douglas.
Mayor, I'm here, and I think the current iteration of the Open Meetings Act requires me to indicate that I am currently located in Fernandina Beach, Nassau County, Florida.
Okay, and I think I'll indicate that I'm a little bit jealous at the moment. Commissioner Perush.
Here.
And Mayor Mike Fournier here as well. We'll try Commissioner Colo again. Commissioner Colo?
Yes, I am here.
Oh, perfect. We got sound check.
And like Commissioner Douglas, I should indicate I'm in Marion County in Indianapolis, Indiana.
I'll let the record indicate also that I'm a little not jealous in that particular location at the moment.
Don't be.
It's my hometown, Mayor.
Thank you for the evidentiary remark, Commissioner Macy. All right. So we're going to begin today with an invocation given by myself, Mayor Fournier, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. As November 3rd approaches, let us give thanks to all of our poll workers, volunteers, and the City Clerk's office for ensuring a fair and complete election. This is our last meeting before the election, an election that has been marked by what appears to be historical turnout and a palatable sense of division among our American brethren. We commonly discuss the outcome of elections in terms of candidates and political parties, but perhaps we should see elections for what they truly are, a reflection of us, the voters, a snapshot of America. Let us not forget that we choose not only the people who represent us, but in the manner in which they do so. We, the people, determine what is important and how those things shall get addressed. At some point, no matter who you vote for, we are all culpable and implicit in the eventual state and health of our nation. We determine our fate not just on election day, but in the choices we make every day. Where do we choose to spend our money? How do we treat our neighbors? Do we admit when we are wrong? Do we reject lies, liars, and rhetoric? Do we change our mind when it is right and just to do so? Do we promote what we believe is right, or do we first seek to tear someone else down? Do we cave to paranoia and conspiracy, or offer the benefit of the doubt? Do we reject facts that challenge our worldview, or do we embrace progress and seek first to understand? We are not each other's enemies. The true enemies we face are willful ignorance, misplaced anger, and unrestrained greed. In our pursuit of a stronger and more united nation, state, and city, we ask for the courage to free ourselves of the divisive traps set by those who seek to exploit us. We ask for the enlightenment to accept there is no absolute truth, only worldviews rooted in perspective and bias. We ask for the reverence to treat each other with the respect, decency, and dignity that every person deserves. We ask for the humility to know that alone we do not have all the answers, but together we have the best chance of a brighter future. And finally, we ask for the spirit as a people to unite around American values and restore trust in each other. May each of us live up to our noble expectations of one another. Amen. So I'll ask if you can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we're on to number 5 on our agenda, which is the proclamation designating November 6, 2020 as Glen Friday in Royal Oak. And I see Jim O'Brien is on from CSX Radio. How are you doing today, Jim?
Oh, I'm wonderful. It's an honor. Thank you, Mayor, and everyone on the City Commission. It's an absolute honor to be here tonight and represent not just people from Royal Oak, but all over Southeast Michigan. We talk about Glen Friday and the idea behind it. Thank you for having me.
We're excited to have you, and we appreciate you taking time out of your evening. I know your mornings start really early, And, we're happy, and actually the tables are turned. I don't know if you guys know, but Jim had an opportunity to pose a question to me on the radio. And I said, well, Jim, I'll tell you what, I have a hunch that, the commission will be receptive to this, but we agreed that he would come here today in our city commission meeting and plead his case to make November 6, 2020 Glen Friday in Royal Oak. And so, Jim, the tables are turned. Looks like we're interviewing you now versus the other way around. And I just want to give you a moment to kind of talk about your idea. Talk about, obviously we know here in Royal Oak the importance of Glenn Frey and his contributions to music and to art, and certainly, the history he has here in Royal Oak. But I want to hand it over to you and offer your thoughts on Glen Friday here this November 6th.
Again, thank you to everyone for allowing me this time this evening. I appreciate it. We were the station behind Glen Frey Drive. And when we came up with the idea, everyone in the city was so gracious to get it done. And I don't know if you know this, but people, when they come to Detroit from all over the world, will stop and find Glen Frey Drive just so they can take a picture next to it. And a lot of times they share that with us. The impact of Glen Frey, from Don Darrow to doing garage gigs to his relationship with Bob Seger in Detroit music, is worldwide. And the influence on thousands of musicians, it's touched a lot of people. And when we came up with the idea that next Friday, the 6th of November, is Glen Frey's birthday. So we thought Friday. It would take a day to celebrate the music and the life and the legacy of Glen Frey. And we do have the blessing of Cindy Frey, Glen's widow. We reached out to them about it as well, let them know. Joe Walsh from the Eagles has been supportive of this. Bob Seger is aware of this as well. But most importantly, it's the people of Royal Oak have just been so gracious with Glen Frey Drive. And so we're asking one more time, we would like to make Friday, November 6th, Glen Friday in honor of Royal Oak's own Glen Frey. Thank you.
And Jim, we're very grateful for everything that you've done to help honor one of our most famous and important citizens. And what I'll do now is, does anyone have any questions about making November 6th Glen Friday here in Royal Oak? I'll just offer up, you've been a good friend of this community, and we're very grateful for you and CSX taking the initiative to really make this happen. We're grateful for the renaming of Glen Frey Drive, and we're grateful for you reaching out and coming up with this idea. And it's because of people like you, we can contribute to the culture that is Royal Oak. So thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you.
I'm going to look around, and I think Jim did a pretty convincing case, although we didn't get the Southern attorney.
No, I wasn't going to do the hard Southern attorney pitch. Respectful of this commission meeting. I could do it, but no, I really do appreciate the time. I know what a busy world it is, and for you to take time out to talk about Glen Frey and this idea really is humbling, and everybody at CSX and all our listeners to Big Jim's House really do appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I kept tabs. I see a lot of the listeners thought it was a really good idea. A lot of folks from Royal Oak contributing to the conversation, and certainly this made a lot of sense to me when you first brought it up. And I know Carol Schwanger had a big part in helping make sure that we got the right proclamation in order, and that this is going to be fruition. And I have to, or come to fruition. I have to also thank Aaron at DPS, because he also took an opportunity to help partake and make a few signs, that will help support some charity efforts as well. So it took a lot of hands, but it started with a good idea. And I don't see any objection to this coming from my fellow commissioners. So it's going to be my privilege and my honor to read this proclamation. If you give me a second here, we're working on everything electronic. So this is a proclamation designating November 6, 2020, Glen Friday in Royal Oak. Whereas in 1952, at the age of 4, Glen Frey moved from the city of Detroit to Royal Oak. And whereas the Frey family made Royal Oak their home, first home in Wyandotte Street, and then a move to a larger home on Catalpa Drive, where Glen's parents remained for 50 years. And whereas Glen was influenced and encouraged by the teachers he had in Royal Oak schools, especially at Dendero High School, from which he graduated in 1966. And whereas Glen played the trumpet in Dondero High School marching band, and whereas And it was while he was at Dondero High School that Glenn and his friends formed the first band, the Subterraneans. And whereas the Subterraneans were the first ever live band hired to perform at a high school dance at Dondero, when they performed their first gig to 600 students at the dance and received a hefty paycheck of $18. And whereas Glenn was so affected by the teacher who helped him get his first gig at the high school dance that after graduation, he returned to visit this teacher. And while Glenn had left Royal Oak to pursue his career in California, he never forgot his roots in Royal Oak and Dondero High School, where he returned during the 1980s to visit a favorite teacher and gave a speech to students in the auditorium. And whereas the listeners and staff of WCXS 94.7 Big Jim's House, hosted by Jim O'Brien, have supported and look forward to celebrating his birthday and commemorating his life achievements, legacy, and impact on Glenn Friday, November 6, 2020. Whereas it is clear Glenn Frey has a very special place in the heart of the city of Royal Oak, so too does the city have a special place in the heart for Glenn Frey, our hometown son. Now therefore be it resolved, I, Mayor Fournier, and the members of the Royal Oak City Commission hereby proclaim November 6, 2020 as Glenn Frey Day in the city of Royal Oak, and call upon our citizens to celebrate the life, legacy, and great talent of this truly remarkable Royal Oaker on this anniversary of his 72nd birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for making this possible. Everyone on the City Commission, Mayor, and all listeners of CSX, we're going to celebrate his life, his music, his legacy, and obviously Royal Oak. And thank you. Yeah, this is fantastic. This is fantastic. Thank you.
Well, we look forward to seeing you out on November 6, 2020, Jim. And thank you
We'll be there.
for your contributions and starting this idea. And it's our privilege and honor to make November 6, 2020, Glenn Friday. Thank you very much. And thank you for taking time tonight to come here and kind of, show us and explain to us, the origination of this thought. So we're really appreciative.
Thank you. I think Glenn said it best. Take it easy. God bless everybody. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
You too, Jim. Thank you. All right, this brings us to item number 6, which is the presentation plans for the Kim Gibbs Memorial Garden. I see, for those of you from our last meeting, remember we had a couple technical difficulties. Aaron and I did our best to kind of explain the concept, but certainly we couldn't take credit at all for the great idea that came from a few young women that we see here on the Zoom screen. So it was my pleasure with Erica and Laura Harrison and
Pamela Lindell.
We covered a lot of turf, excuse the pun, when we were out at South Barton Park. And so I want to hand it over to Laura and crew to kind of give us a chance to explain a little bit more about the garden and help us have a better vision of what we can expect moving forward. So I'll hand it over to you guys.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you.
Oh, you can. Okay. First, I want to apologize for 2 weeks ago. I'm still an amateur when it comes to computers. Anyhow, my name is Laura Harrison. I am a resident of Royal Oak, and I come to give you a little bit of history about this. It started when Andy Prentice came to me with an idea. He said, how about we get some of you people together that have been longtime Royal Oakers, business people, and form a little group where you guys can get together and just have lunch and talk and stuff. So it started with 5 people: Jean Chamberlain, Jeannie Tower, Carol Hennessy, Eileen Hill, Helen Cost, and myself. And we formed a group called the OB Group. And I didn't come up with the name, somebody else did.
You should say what that stands for.
Should I say what OB stands for, like nobody knows anymore? It's a secret. It means old broads, but we're not. Anyhow, we meet for lunch once a month. It's been a little screwed up this year, but so is everything else. So what we did is we had a luncheon and we have a Christmas party every year. And at the Christmas party, what we decided to do was take donations. The first couple of years, what we did is we brought a toy in and we donated it to the Boys and Girls Club for their Christmas toy collection. And then a couple of years after we did that, we kind of decided, let's do something in Royal Oak, for Royal Oak itself. And that's when we came up with the idea of our donations that we got, put it all together and spruce up a park. So we started, and of course, Kim was just absolutely right in the middle of that, you know, and being a gardener myself, I thought it was a great idea. So for the last 3 Christmases, we've been collecting donations, and I had talked to Parks and Rec about what we were doing, and they said, you know how much it costs? And I said, yep. I have a good idea how much swings and things are, but I said, we're going to start small. So Kim and I had gotten together and we looked around for a small park. And start small. It's the best way to start a business. And so we went and looked at, Kim went around and took pictures, and we decided on Gundire Park, which is up in the north end. And we had been going along. Well, after Kim passed away, I said, I've got to do something. You've got to come up with an idea of something to do. And that's when I got together, talked to a couple of people, and this is where we came up with a memorial garden in the park. So we looked around, and we've been taking donations, and people have been very generous. So what we are asking is that we have picked out a park, and it's the South
Barton Park
South. And we got together Jan Bills, who is a garden architect, came up with a plan, and we met with the mayor and with, I can't think of his name, the new guy at Parks and Rec. Aaron. And I'm sorry. And we got together and we kind of walked around the whole park. It's got this beautiful gazebo that looks so nice. It looks like it was put up last week. It's been, well protected. So we thought that we'd move it. And because Kim so loved the farmer's market, we also thought it was a good place to do it. So that's where we started from. Erica, I'm going to let you to kind of go on and what we've done so far.
So we, Laura already alluded, we've been raising funds, for about a month, 2 months.
Yeah.
And we've just hit over our $3,000 mark. We're hoping to raise $5,000. As Laura mentioned, this is going to be at Barton Park South, which is right next to Imagine Theater, in between Barton Apartments and Imagine Theater. It's a great location right next to the farmers market, and one that we think is maybe even underutilized. And we think that this new garden design is going to really highlight the gazebo and encourage more use of it.
Mary, you can do more weddings.
Yeah. 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 And we had also talked about maybe you can have, like a jazz night there. People can go and enjoy it because there's tables, there's nice shade.
Maybe we can get the Eagles there. Yes.
So anyway, I do want to say thank you to the farmers who have have agreed to help us. They're going to help ensure that the park's maintained by supplying annuals to keep the park nice. I'd like to say thank you to the city, specifically Aaron, for being so enthusiastic and helping us to achieve this goal. And I'd also like to thank the mayor and the commissioners for approving our plan and for allowing us to have this happen. We're really looking forward to next spring and having this planted. So thank you.
It'll be wonderful honoring Kim.
Yeah.
Well, we're grateful for the work that you guys have done, and we look forward to, assisting in any way we can to help make sure this can come to a fruition in a beautiful, funded, lasting way. And, just keep us apprised. If we make some milestones, let us know, and we'll get this in front of everyone again so we can kind of keep the public up to date on the progress and encourage their involvement and participation. So, nice work. I see we have a question. Commissioner Bruce, did you have your hand up?
Yes. Are there any plans to have a memorial plaque or a memorial name designation or something like that at this location?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, there are plans to have a plaque, whether it's a plaque that's, like freestanding or it's like part of a stone. But yeah, there are plans to have a plaque so that people know it's Kim Gibbs Memorial Garden. I almost forgot, for those that are interested in donating, we do have a GoFundMe page, and you can find that by typing in Kim Gibbs into the search engine when you're on the GoFundMe page. If you're on Facebook, you can also go to Kim Gibbs Commissioner page, and there is a link there as well. And for those that don't feel comfortable donating online, there's also information on how you can send a check in to make a contribution to the garden. Like I said, we are hoping to raise $5,000. We feel that would be more than enough to do everything that we want to do and make sure that this garden, is beautiful. And we're already over $3,000, so we're very excited. We think that we can, reach our goal and get this done in the spring.
Another nice thing about it is we're going to incorporate flowers from Kim's personal home garden.
That's right.
So she had so many lovely perennials that we're able to save some of them and bring them to this new garden as a tribute to her.
Yeah. The other thing is, I've already heard from the guy that runs the golf course. He wants to donate a tree in her honor. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah, and hopefully this spring we can, do I know we're breaking ground this fall, but hopefully we can do, bring a little bit more attention to it when it's safer to come back outside. We have a little bit more space, and we can, solicit support of other contributors, both in terms of paid in kind as well as if there's any cash contributions needed as well. So I think there'll be some enthusiasm for people to, do what they can do, like Joe and others, whether it's donating a tree or signing up to, help maintain the plants. I think we're going to get a lot of interest. So can't thank you guys enough for coming here and a second time, Ms. Harrison, and helping explain
I still want better, but
and explaining the things that simply Aaron and myself aren't qualified to really explain and talk about. So posted, and let us know what we can do to help, and let us know where the milestones are, and let's look forward to inauguration here in the spring and honoring Kim. So thank you for all your work.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I've got one more thing. It's not on this topic. Would somebody please go around to these corporate restaurants like Panda and tell them to clean up their garbage? That would
Thank you, Ms. Harrison. Your request is noted, and we'll make sure that people are tidying up. And
My neighbors are having a cow.
it is a mayoral declaration that garbage belongs in the garbage. Trash belongs in the garbage.
Thank
Please don't be
you.
a litter bug. I teach my kids to yell at people that litter. I teach my kids to yell at them. Probably not a healthy parental task, but nonetheless, we like to call people out when
Well,
we're
maybe-
in litter. So
Yeah, maybe
we'll,
a
I
couple
think our
of
city manager will make a note of that.
tickets will, maybe a couple of tickets will wake them up.
There you go. Thank you, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
guys.
you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. All right. That brings us to item number 7, which is public comment. Ms. Schwanger, do we have any public comment for this evening?
This evening, Mayor, we have one public comment in addition to Ms. Harrison's.
Okay.
Kind of started nicely.
My name is Alan Hale, and I'm a resident of Ferndale near Hilton Road, just south of the city of Royal Oak. I have a wife who is paralyzed and uses a manual wheelchair, and I also chair a volunteer commission for raising accessibility awareness for people with disabilities in the Ferndale city government and local businesses. In recent bike trips and walks to downtown Royal Oak, I've noticed a problem with accessibility across the entire downtown from COVID-19 patio adjustments, with over 11 businesses identified as lacking where someone who is independent with a disability would not be able to participate in that business. Many of these cases do not meet ADA minimums for compliance, let alone contribute to an inclusive downtown to people with disabilities. In email correspondence with City Commission representatives and the Royal Oak PDA, my requests to proactively look into this were ignored and met instead with hostile indifference from DDA staff after waiting for 5 weeks to receive a reply, which I found to be an ineffective response while civil rights for people with disabilities are on the line. COVID is tough for everyone, but tougher for people with disabilities, with newly rush-built environments not made for them on top of existing inclusion challenges. Today, I'm asking the city to openly publish its accessibility guidelines for COVID patio adjustments to ensure they are accounting for it in approvals while having a chance to be reviewed by people with disabilities. Not only is it the right thing to do, but accessibility is good for business through offering tax credits to offset patio costs and opening businesses to more customers. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, that concludes our public comment for this evening's meeting. And so that brings us to item number 8, which is the approval of the agenda. We have Commissioner Douglas.
Yeah, Mayor, I would like to move that we approve the agenda with a slight modification, and that is that we switch items 15 and 16.
We have a motion by Commissioner Douglas. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Colo. Okay, discussion on the approval of the agenda. Commissioner Douglas.
Well, I just think that that will shorten the discussion because I suspect that item 16 is going to answer many of the, if not all of the issues that I would have brought up in item 15.
Makes sense to this, Mayor. All right. Not seeing any discussion, I'll call for the vote. We'll start with Commissioner Colo.
Yes.
Commissioner Dubak.
Yes.
Commissioner Macy.
Yes.
Commissioner Lavasser.
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas.
Yes.
Commissioner Prush.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, we have an approved agenda. So this brings us to item 9, which is the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to pull anything off the consent agenda for further discussion? Okay, not seeing any hands. The consent agenda now consists of claims from October 20th, 23rd, and October 27th, approval of purchase orders, approval of agreement for services, Royal Oak Youth Assistance, contract modification, professional engineering services, 2021 to 2024, asphalt resurfacing improvements, and receive and file the non-action items, which is notice of receipt of Institute Museum and Library Services, Library of Michigan Coronavirus Aid Recovery and Economic Security Grant, notice of receipt of National Endowment for the Arts Grant, in June 2020 revenue and expenditure variance summary report. Is there a motion? Motion by Commissioner Perush, second by Commissioner Dubuck. Discussion on the consent agenda as presented. Commissioner Colo.
Can I just really quickly say congratulations to the library and those receiving action items. The one is a grant that was used to purchase Chromebooks for the community that everyone should take advantage of. We have 15 in the one grant. And the other one is using seed money for the makerspace that a staff member went out and found. So they're really cool items. So congratulations to the library on that.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Cole, for bringing that to the surface here. Anybody else? Alrighty, I'll call for the vote on the consent agenda. We'll start with Commissioner Perush.
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas.
Yes.
Commissioner Lavasser.
Yes.
Commissioner Macy.
Yes.
Commissioner Dubuck.
Yes.
Commissioner Colo.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Alrighty, that brings us to item 10, which is a resolution in support of Oakland County Parks and Recreation ballot question. And this is a proclamation. I don't know if Mr. Brake or Mr. Filipski want to introduce this at all before the proclamation is read.
Happy to introduce this. So Mayor and City Commission, the request was made to present this that we can create greater awareness for not only the millage renewal, but increase to take on additional programs. And it notes the number of visitors that the Oakland County Parks has 2 million annual visitors that go to the park each year. And so the valuable services that they provide to the community. And so present this for your consideration to draw the awareness as the remaining voters who are voting on November 3rd, that they will consider this proposal before them.
Any questions for Mr. Brake? Has everyone read the resolution? And I think this is, pointed a little bit more as well because of our partnership with Oakland County Parks and the new Normandy Oaks park that we are getting ready to open. Okay, anyone want to make a motion? Motion by Commissioner Macy. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Colo. All right, discussion. Commissioner Lavasser.
I would have felt better about this had the county commission simply asked that we renew the 0.25 mils that was previously established. As it stands right now, this works out to close to 50% increase in tax revenues over what's currently being raised through the millage that the county parks has. Had the commission simply chosen to renew the millage at the 0.25 mil rate, it would have still been a 6% increase in revenue, in tax revenue over what is currently being collected. I just can't see advocating for a tax increase during a time when so many people are having a hard time financially due to the pandemic. And I think it was a mistake of the county commission to give us an all or nothing proposition on this being an increase and not simply a renewal. Certainly we all support parks, and this particular tax increase on its own isn't particularly devastating. But the thing is, every year or every other year, voters see some tax increase here, some tax increase there, which in the aggregate turns out to be quite a bit. And they're all for things that are on their face worthy, but there comes a point where we need our elected officials to be more conscientious to keeping the costs down and not just putting a tax increase in front of us every time they get a whim to do so. So I'm going to be voting no against this resolution.
Anybody else? Commissioner Dubuck?
Sure. I mean, I guess I'd say it's a question one of elected officials putting a question before residents and saying, hey, do you want us to do this in a way that creates a sustainable parks department? The county has put out a good amount of information on the fact that the way it was being run for a number of years under previous administrations, previous commissions, had kind of run the well a little dry and didn't save up enough money to renew the parks the way they should be renewed. And as a resident and a taxpayer, I would rather pay a tiny fraction more to have really nice parks that are being kept up and maintained versus paying the same amount for parks that are slowly decaying and then blaming elected officials because the money isn't there to pay for them. The parks system is self-sustaining. It has the money that it has. This allows for what we have to be maintained and improved upon in years to come without having to come back year after year. So while I understand that, I think as voters and taxpayers, we should be really thoughtful and strategic in where we want to invest. I think particularly in a time when folks are limited as to entertainment options, parks and outdoor recreation are even more important than they've ever been. And so I can't think of a better time to be investing in these activities, which are senior friendly and child friendly and family friendly, and get everybody opportunities to get outdoors when many of our other activities have been taken off the table. And also create a sustainable park system for generations to come by being honest with residents and saying, this is what it costs to keep the nice things that we have. This is about value. It's a much better value to pay the extra on for an average resident $30 a year to have a really, really nice park system than to save that $30 a year and watch it, slowly fall apart or eventually have to pay a bigger millage in the future to fix everything. So for that reason, I think it's worthy of us encouraging residents to support this because I think there's a clear connection between the quality of these parks and property values. I know that my family and I use Red Oaks Water Park. My kids play soccer at the Red Oaks soccer fields. And I know that we've been to a number of other county parks around the county, and they enhance quality of life, they protect water and green space. And that's surely something worth investing. And this is just us saying we believe it's worth investing in. And we hope residents do too. But if residents choose not to, then the county will come together and make another plan. So that's why I'm happy to support the resolution and support.
Thank you, Commissioner DeBuck. Anybody else? Commissioner Macy?
So I think Commissioner Dubuck stated the case perfectly. I agree in the entirety with what he said. And I just wanted to add something to address Commissioner Lavasser's point about residents that may be struggling. Another thing that Oakland County is offering right now is micro grants in conjunction with United Way, Commissioner Dubuck's employer, that allows residents who are struggling right now during COVID, who normally in pre-COVID times have a income of $70,000 or less and now have experienced some loss of income due to COVID, to apply for and receive a micro grant of up to $500 from the county. So I encourage people who are struggling right now to look into that, as that's a great opportunity that the Oakland County has made available with the funds that they've received from the federal government.
Commissioner Colo.
So I'll say I've already filled out the circle and endorsed this on my ballot personally, and I'm happy to do it here also. For a couple of reasons. One, I like a lot of points have been made. I really enjoyed the parks this summer. My son and I went up to Aspen Oaks looking for the comet that came through, and we had a really good time with it. A very special moment, and they were free, and it was a great time. And speaking of being free, we talk about aging in place and how important it is in Oakland County. Well, this helps because it's going to provide free admission to parks for seniors and disabled people. So we're making sure that Oakland County is a place that you want to raise a family, you want to stay here when you're move on into your twilight. So I'm very happy to support this. I'll finally add, I grew up in Waterford where we have the wave pool, which is now just the waiting pool because the waves are no longer functioning because it's been in such disrepair. So the parks need repair. There's been a long time that they've been neglected, and I'm happy to support the parks, keep Oakland County a great place.
All right, anyone else? Yeah, I mean, I echo the sentiments of my colleagues, and I'll just add that, this is a levy. It's an incremental levy. Things have gone up in cost. We've had inflation. We've had other things. We've had, I know Oakland County put together a pretty comprehensive master plan. They had a lot of public input, and in order to fund it and make sure that we have the type of recreation not only that we expect, but recreation that's functioning, this is the plan that was put forward. And we're residents of Oakland County. Our homes are located here. We live here. We have, some of us have our parents living here and nearby that, will certainly take advantage of the recreational opportunities, especially in an age where, people aren't going to Disney World, they aren't traveling, they aren't doing the things they used to do. And I think Commissioner Colo hit it right on the head. I mean, we as a city have and are looking for any and every and all opportunity to support an aging population. We have aging in place. We're looking at housing stock and inventory. What can we do to make sure that, Royal Oak can remain home for people at every stage in life? And this offers, this millage aligns with, and this proposal, this ballot question aligns with our initiatives as a city. And so supporting it both personally is one thing, but also supporting it from our own strategic and visionary perspective is important as well, because this fits into exactly what we're trying to do, albeit, through the county. So I like the idea of supporting something that, especially when, dealing with concerns of a senior population and aging population, this is something that will help us get there for the next 20 years. I see Commissioner DeBuck had his hand up.
Sorry, Mayor, and I don't think the seminary stated this, or did Mr. Colo state that there are going to be free passes paid for with the extra dollars? Mr. Colo said that? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, free passes for seniors, people with disabilities, and veterans. Yeah.
Commissioner Lavasser?
I'd be very curious what type of increase in the millage we would need in order to justify, or not justify, but rather to support the free passes for seniors and military vets and disabled. But that's all a positive thing, but it's just a fraction of the millage is what would be needed in order to fund that. Nowhere near the 50% increase that we're looking at. It's being advanced because who could say no to that? Who would think that that's a bad idea? But that by itself is not enough to justify a 50% increase in the millage rate.
Well, I mean, if you presume that the money is being put into a bonfire and lit up, I guess, not to insult your point, Commissioner Lavasser, but, the money is being used to put into aging infrastructure within the recreational activities and facilities in Oakland County. There are walking and biking paths that need to be maintained and upgraded. There are things for families and younger people and grandparents that take their kids to the water park, like Commissioner Colo said, the wading pool versus a wave pool. So there are a lot of things. I mean, the money goes towards adding more recreation and upgrading the recreation that we have in Oakland County, but also taking the recreation that we have and making it functional and safe as expected. And so for me, I understand how some people, might not support the recreational improvements, and I understand that and I get that. But for myself and I think in my role as mayor and the things that we're trying to do in our strategic planning, I think almost all of what the county is trying to do with this millage, even attributed with the nominal increase, lines up with exactly what we're trying to do and complement what we're trying to do. So I think for me, the value is there, both in terms personally, but also as my role as mayor in the city, supporting such a question. But I respect your point of view, Commissioner Lavasser. Commissioner Douglas.
Mayor, is there a motion on the floor?
There's a motion on the floor. So if I don't see any other discussion, I will read the resolution and then call for the vote. Okay, this is the City of Royal Oak resolution in support of the Oakland County Parks and Recreation ballot question, whereas Oakland County Parks and Recreation has provided park facilities, programs, special events, and services to the residents of Oakland County since 1966. And whereas Oakland County Parks and Recreation creates a unique and exciting recreation experiences for 2 million visitors to its parks each year and an additional 1.6 million residents via its outreach services. And whereas Oakland County Parks and Recreation creates and supports community collaboration so that all residents of all abilities have access to the quality recreation experiences that enhance quality of life. And whereas Oakland County Parks and Recreation has enhanced local city, village, and township special events, programs, and day camps for children since 1982 through the Recreational Assistance Partnership, devoting as much as $250,000 annually to this effort. And whereas Oakland County Parks and Recreation Commission mission is to provide quality recreation experiences that encourage healthy lifestyles, support economic prosperity, and promote the protection of natural resources. Whereas Oakland County Parks and Recreation will, should the millage pass, create funding programs for local cities, villages, townships to help support local park and trail development efforts. Now therefore be it resolved, the City of Royal Oak officially declares its support for the Oakland County Parks and Recreation's ballot question on November 3rd, 2020 general election. All right, I'll call for the vote. I'm gonna start with Commissioner Colo.
Yes.
Commissioner Dubois.
Yes.
Commissioner Macy.
Yes.
Commissioner Lavasser.
No.
Commissioner Douglas.
Yes.
Commissioner Perush.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, the resolution passes. This brings us to item 11, which is approval of permanent outdoor service permits. And I will, Mr. Brake or Chief O'Donoghue.
Mayor, I think I'll take this one. Mayor and City Commission, the Police Department has received formal requests for additional outdoor service permits from 3 establishments, Royal Oak Brewery, Lockhart's, and Fifth Avenue. Although the City Commission extended the temporary COVID-19 permits until the end of April, the Michigan Liquor Control Commission's temporary outdoor service permits are set to expire November 30th. I believe that most of our restaurants don't realize that they can't operate without the MLCC's approval. They may extend that deadline again, but as of right now, there's no indication they're intending to. So in order to continue to operate, these businesses will need to obtain a permanent outdoor service permit from the MLCC and also obtain approval for a change of plan of operation from the City Commission. Because we are still very much in the midst of a pandemic, the rules and guidelines regarding restaurants are expected to continue to change. And so in order to continue their outdoor service uninterrupted, we're proposing that the City Commission authorize the police chief to administratively approve change of plan of operations so that so long as these establishments operate consistent with the city's temporary COVID-19 permits. To protect the city attorney's office has drafted a letter of agreement similar to what we do with dance permit agreements that will allow the city to quickly and permanently close these outdoor service areas should that be our desire. It would, Dave can correct me, but I believe it's, we require 10 days notice. There is a resolution put forward, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
We have any questions for the chief? Commissioner Perush.
Chief, if we give you administrative approval to do this administratively, will you still routinely, when you do this, at least let us know that this is happening, that you have granted administrative approval to a particular applicant and or removed one or pulled one back because of whatever reason?
Yes, most certainly. If this is approved, truthfully, I expect this to be an extremely busy week because every establishment that's already approved, we're going to need to get a hold of them, let them know what they need to do in order to continue operating. I believe almost all of them, if not all of them, are going to want to continue. But yes, I can certainly update the commission on that.
And I don't think we need a whole lot of detail. We don't need a lengthy report on each one, but just a couple of sentences saying, you know, we received an application and we're going to administratively approve X or Y or Z, just so you know.
Okay, certainly.
Commissioner Macy?
Hi, Chief. This is a little bit on the side of this issue, but we heard tonight from public comment someone who's concerned about many of these outdoor patio areas not being accessible. So I know you're not asking us to take action on that at this moment, but I think it is going to be of concern to this commission, and I'm wondering if you have any input on that, and if it's something that we I think we will probably be interested in adding this to our requirements for these outdoor patios. And I wonder if it's something that you could be talking to these establishments about right now as they move forward, signaling that we're
Yeah.
interested in that coming.
Yeah, it's my understanding that that is required. They must be ADA compliant. I think some of the ones that might have went up quickly, I can't speak whether or not they all were, but as they're putting a more permanent structure in that it's able to accommodate winter, they are required. Just to let you know the process, as these come through, planning, building, and engineering, and myself review them, and whichever department might have some concerns or input goes directly with the applicant. I know in regards with Lockhart's, our engineer, Holly Donahue, corrected them on the type of cable protectors they need. There's certain cable protectors that are ADA compliant and ones that aren't. From a cost benefit analysis, they're much better to take those cables up overhead and make it easier on everyone. I think that's what they're doing. So that is on their radar, and we will make that part of the process, as you need to be ADA compliant.
So, I wonder if we found out what those 11 establishments that he was concerned about were, like, is there a review process to check in on them, and before we continue to approve this plan that may not be compliant?
I don't have that information. I don't know if someone else in the city does, but a part of the process is you have to meet all the building and code requirements, and I think that's where the ADA compliance would come in. So we certainly can inspect whichever ones there may be an issue with.
Okay, so it sounds like the solution would be, like, if we hear of one that is reported to be not ADA compliant, is that we let you know, or we let the building department know when they do a further inspection?
Yeah, I think it would start with the building department, but you could let any one of us know, and I think we can follow up as a team.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, Chief O'Donoghue, have you had any issues so far with the way the petitioners have run their redesigned outdoor operations?
No, I haven't. Nope.
Okay. Anybody else? Questions, Commissioner Dubak?
Yes, sorry, just to finalize Commissioner Macy's line of questioning. Chief, are you aware of the complaints that have come in for the gentleman's call this evening?
I haven't been made directly aware. I heard there was something through planning, and but I specifically I don't know which businesses he's referring to.
All right, I just want to get some clarity on where the breakdown is there. If there are complaints coming in, I think we want residents to know that we take it seriously for all the same reasons that we just discussed, that these are folks' options for getting outdoors, and we need to make sure that everyone has the ability to participate. So if there's anything that needs to be done on our end to clarify or reinforce that, let us know, please.
Okay.
Commissioner Colo?
Chief, what is the process for, or maybe Mr. Gillum, what's the process for taking a approval away if there's a restaurant being a bad actor in town, not following COVID procedures? Can this also be retroactively revoked, correct?
Well, I'll let Dave weigh in, but it can be revoked if the city decides that they just don't want it. It's basically, for whatever reason, city can give them 10 days notice. If they're violating COVID rules or that kind of thing, there's other measures. But if this is a repeated issue, I would think that, yeah, we would definitely revoke their temporary approvals.
We have the right to terminate for convenience, right? Which means we can do it for any reason, anytime. Notice, we don't have to have an excuse if we find that, the establishment is being a bad actor in any of our opinions. We can revoke that privilege.
Yes, and there is a conversation, I think, when we get out of this COVID, on these outdoor service areas have been nice for the most part, and so whether or not we want our businesses to invest in keeping them. The outdoor dining's nice, and I think it's been overall a positive experience for a lot of people. So
Yeah, I think it changes the vibe, a little bit. And I think, Royal Oak, I've always said, instead of people coming to a specific destination, it would be great whenever it's a warm day. The first thing people think is, all right, we're going to Royal Oak and we'll find a place to eat. That would be the best branding our downtown could have from a vibrancy perspective on nice days and outdoor dining. So anybody else have any questions for the chief or any motions? Commissioner Perush?
I'll move approval of this resolution.
Motion by Commissioner Perush. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Macy. Discussion. All right, with none, I'll call for the vote. Commissioner Perush?
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas?
Yes.
Commissioner Lavasser?
Yes.
Commissioner Macy?
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbs?
Yes.
Commissioner Colo?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay. A second here. I'm working on 1.5 screens here today. I realized during the Glenn Frey proclamation that the print on my iPhone may not be as big as I need it to be, or I'm getting a little bit older. My eyes aren't as trustworthy. So bear with me here. Okay. This brings us to item 12, which is the parking meeting project update.
Mayor, City Commission, I think it's a parking meter project update. But as you know, our parking systems manager, Keith Frey, he's been researching options to update and streamline the city's parking system to improve the overall experience for our customers. I would like to point out, Keith has been with us for about 1.5 years, and he's done really a great job of resolving a lot of the customer service aspects that have kind of plagued the system. And he's done a lot to try to bring everything under one roof so we could resolve issues. He's been working on a project to update the meters. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic has severely hampered his efforts. And those delays has resulted in a bit of a timeliness issue that is outlined in the memo from Mr. Frey's memo, which is attached. The purpose of this discussion is to kind of update the City Commission on the parking meter project that, if adopted, will result in a significant change with how the meter parking is managed. I do need to point out that there are some outstanding issues. This is definitely not a project that's ready for prime time yet, but it's definitely moving in that direction. And of course, any such approval would, before we send in a contract, we would need our bond counsel to approve that, and the final contract would require City Commission approval. Just to give you an update, back in, I believe, February, Keith got a hold of, or was in touch with MPS, which is a company out of Minneapolis. They do parking meters, and we set up a test site. It's on Main Street, just south of 3rd on the east side. You may have seen them. Their system uses license plate readers. It's a pretty impressive system. They provide us a lot of good data. And it solves a lot of the issues that have kind of plagued our parking enforcement. In a nutshell, MPS sets up meters. They read the meter. They have kiosks, and then you'd pay the meter. If for some reason you're at wherever your destination is longer than you expected, you come back, the little bollard outside your car is red, indicating that you've overstayed your time. You can then shore up the meter and pay for your excess time without a violation. You also can preload money into your account, which you can just pull up and park and get out and do your business and leave, and you don't have to do anything. The system automatically recognizes you and debits your account. The one thing the system is designed to do is anybody, though, who parks on a street for more than 2 hours will get a ticket without exception. There's no way of shoring that up. And the idea behind that is we want people who are visiting for a short time to use the street meters. We want people who are visiting for longer to use the parking structures. The first 2 hours on every parking structure is free. So that's just part of it, and I just think you need to be aware of it. The way this works is the city has no capital cost initially. The company, it's a 5-year contract, and the company splits the parking revenue and violation revenue. In our test area, we found that about half the customers who pull up don't even feed the meter. So we're getting about a 50% compliance rate. The MPS projections are that both parking meter revenue will increase significantly, but then tickets will also increase significantly. But that is done through the LPR system, where it's not a meter maid walking down the street giving a ticket. It is the system recognizes you've overstayed, didn't pay, didn't shore up your account, and then a ticket is sent out. That in a very, very, I should mention the system also has some features. They will use the Park Mobile app, but they have some features with their own app that can show where open spaces are at, can direct customers to open spaces. And it also has features that allow our maintenance personnel, instead of going up and down every street emptying meters, it tells them which meters need to be emptied, so it makes them much more efficient. All the maintenance, everything is done by MPS, so that burdens off city employees. So in a nutshell, that's the system. Keith, I believe, is on the line, so everything I said that was incorrect, he can correct for me. But before I pivot to Keith, the issue we're having with our current meters is we have IPS meters. Those, about 800 of those meters have a modem that operates under G2. T-Mobile will not support G2 at the end of the year. So we're coming up to a time crunch. We knew this day was coming, but IPS and most everyone felt like T-Mobile was going to extend that period out. They didn't expect them to hold that hard line, but as of right now, they seem to be doing that. So Keith was also researching a Civic smart meter, which is a different type of smart meter, does all the regular functions that our current meters do, but it's about half the price. When the pandemic hit and everything shut down, Civic Smart really didn't have the ability to, they basically shut down, and I can let Keith explain it. We still want to test those Civic Smart meters because if we opt not to go with MPS and we go with the regular meters we have, those are about 50% cheaper. So we are running up against the clock, so we're going to have to make some decisions. In all likelihood, I think we're going to have to order some IPS meters. We don't need to order all 800, which would cost about $400,000. We could probably, by swapping out some meters and pushing some meters around, we could probably get away with buying significantly less than that. Exactly how many, it's hard to say right now. Any of those meters that we bought would be utilized if we went to MPS, because a lot of our kind of outlying areas, MPS would not be able to service. So we could push those smart meters out to kind of our lesser utilized areas. And then, you know, if we take no action and we don't purchase new meters, the current meters will still work. They'll just be dumb meters. They'll take coin and they'll work with Park Mobile, but they won't take credit card information. So, Keith, if you're on, I don't see you on the screen, but if he's on, are you there, Keith?
And we can see his name. Maybe he has to unmute. Hey, Keith, can you unmute?
No.
Yeah,
There you go.
All right, very good. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Keith Frey, no relation to Glenn. And I'm happy to answer whatever questions you might have. Chief pretty much covered it. We're probably going to have to do something pretty soon. As far as total numbers of metered spaces, the city currently has about 1,500 metered spaces. That doesn't count kiosks. And that would be both on the streets and in the parking lots. So basically what we're looking at, of that 1,500, they're comprised of 2 generations of smart meters and then a number of the old mechanical meters. And what we're looking at is potentially replacing all of the meters with the exception of those that are in the peripheral area. So that the downtown area that's most heavily used would hopefully be covered with newer meters.
Any questions for the chief or Mr. Fry? We'll start with Commissioner Dubuck, then Commissioner Perush.
So with the system that we're looking at, am I understanding right that folks won't have a ticket on their door, but will just a week or so later get one mailed to their home?
That's correct.
And do we understand from the company, does that create more complaints? I feel like folks not having seen their violation, I feel like that's going to exponentially increase the number of grievances the department will be dealing with or courts will be dealing with. Do we view to that?
It's hard to say. I think the fact that I would look at it as if you've ever been in the wrong lane and driving through Washington, D.C. and not have enough people in your car and you get the ticket and they send the ticket, a picture of your car driving in the lane and you're the only one in there on those high occupancy lanes. The ticket comes with a photo and all the information on where you were. So, you know, for our parking system to work, people have to pay the meters, and I guess there is a potential for that.
I mean, my concern is, and I definitely want to invest in something that's going to work. I think as we've talked about parking over the years, you know, my goal has always been like, I think people want to pay. They just want it to be easy and seamless and, you know, quick. And if this is easy and very clear and quick to the point that it's like, well, there's no reason not to pay because it's very clear and it's very easy, that's one thing. But if it's folks are being surprised $20 tickets at their house, I'm worried about. I feel like we have to really front load communication with the new system as we pressure test it and make sure folks are aware, especially if we're going to much more rigidly be enforcing the 2-hour limit on surface spaces.
Chief, can I answer that?
Sure.
Absolutely. In fact, it's been the experience of this company that typically going into it, you will see a moderate increase in complaints because what we're really talking about here is behavioral modification. However, you're also going to see a drastic increase in compliance. You hit it on the head when you said public relations campaign. For the first 30 days, it's even in the contract, that it will only be warnings that are issued for the first 30 days, along with the public relations campaign that they'll sponsor. They'll work closely with the city in that regard.
Before I go to Commissioner Perush, real quick, just to Commissioner DeBuck, I just don't want to forget to ask this question. On that same vein, do we have the ability to throttle, like if we want to charge or not? Because it seems like if there's no cost for us and they're making the investment, then there's a commitment on our end to issue violations, and there's a commitment to say this is what the violations will cost, because they're going to need to get paid back for the equipment installation and all of that. How does that work?
Well, you're correct. That is how it works. And we affirm, like every morning we'd have to go through and confirm that, like, you know, the plate matches the violation, and then they send it out. But there is a commitment on that because the company handles that then. MPS does that for the initial billing.
Yeah, I'm just saying more like, let's just say in February, we want to say, okay, there's no, you know, parking in the streets is free. You know, we're not going to enforce it.
Well, right now, I don't think we can do that with our current bond covenants. I don't think we're allowed to do that technically. So, but yeah, there is a commitment for that because that's how they get paid back. And Keith can confirm this, but it takes them about 2.5 years before they even break even for their investment.
That's correct. It's well into the term of the contract before they recover all of their expenses. And can I just address something else? These I don't know how many of you got an opportunity to actually look at the pay stations when they were set up there, but they have the capability of doing public service announcements on there, amber alerts, weather warnings, like for emergency closures, upcoming parades, arts, beats, and eats. You can put those on those. As far as us bagging meters, the way we currently do, you actually can have just the message on the meter itself. And the reason we were actually even interested in this company at all was because of all these capabilities that they could do that traditional meters can't. And the reasons behind that are this company works off of low voltage electricity, so they're not limited by the battery source that typical traditional meters are. And that's kind of what struck our interest in the company to begin with.
And I just point out also, this allows us to be more flexible in our parking system. When Henry Ford opens up, I think the way we manage the meters and parking system is going to have to adjust to that. I believe initial estimates were 250,000 visitors a year. We're going to have to start enforcing meters earlier once that happens, I would think. So that'll allow us to adjust. You can make changes to parking rates and things like that in different areas. So it puts a lot of flexibility within the system. But
I interrupted you, Commissioner Dubuck, I think. You went on mute, but then I wasn't sure if you were finished after you went on mute.
I'm glad to hear that strong public communications campaign is part of the plan. I still have some concerns about the model, but I understand we're in a time crunch. I don't want to make the quickest choice. I want to make the best choice, and I'm curious. Is there? I know Chief had said we can stick with our old meters even past if they do turn off the 2G service. We can use those for a little while as dumb meters. Is there a plan B or other things we've investigated throughout this process?
Well, yeah, we're still trying to track to see whether or not the Civic Smart meters are a good option for us. In reality, based on where we're at right now, I expect that we are going to be coming forward with a purchase of new IPS meters. The question is how many, because I would think it's not quite 800, but more than 100, and we really have to kind of analyze our parking system, and then we'll be doing a kind of like a major swap of moving meters. So we move those out, but that's going to happen, I think, regardless of what we do. I guess what we're looking for today is if you have strong feelings about MPS one way or another, it would be helpful to know. If the ideas of the zero tolerance for tickets, those kind of things, if you think should be a no-go for us, then we can just move on in the other direction. If you think, well, this is interesting and you want to learn more, we can continue working down that path while we're going to have to put out some capital outlay on the getting some new IPS meters.
Okay, I'm open-minded. I'm interested to hear what everyone else has to say.
Yeah, Commissioner Perush?
Could someone explain the new license plate recognition system that you're going to be using? Because currently when users enter in their license plate number, sometimes they enter in incorrectly and that results in a ticket that is issued inadvertently, just by mistake. Is this system significantly different, and how does it operate, and how is it different?
I'll let Keith handle that one.
The license plate readers, the technology that they have are far and above the license plate readers that are utilized right now by the parking enforcement officers. The issue that you brought up, though, about people erroneously entering their license plate into, say, the app, that's a similar problem that they've told me that they've encountered too. I mean, you can only go so far. What we basically do, if we can show that a parking session has been paid for and it was a user error, for the most part right now, we've been actually requesting dismissals and having the people correct the entry that they made into the app. They have, the chief, when he first gave a summary, they have a feature called a concierge feature, which basically once your information is in the app, the license plate reader takes care of every transaction after that. Every time you park, you can get out and walk away from your vehicle. So you don't have to touch your phone or do anything for the app at all. It's all strictly off the license plate reader. So as these violations come in, I think we actually would have a better way of detecting them, because the information or the data that's gathered from the license plate reader is transferred to us the next morning. We review it before any citations go out. As it stands right now, the only issue we have we have the parking enforcement officers on the street, and they use the license plate reader, but it is a little bit older technology, and there are occasionally errors that come up in the LPRs that the parking enforcement officers currently have.
But I guess I still don't understand, probably because the technology is just beyond me. What actually is read? When you drive your car into a parking space, you don't have a license plate generally on the front of your car, which is close to where the parking meter is. How does the parking meter read your license plate? Either mechanically, or is it entered mechanically by you, or does it somehow magically read what your license plate is?
It's camera. There's cameras, high resolution cameras that are in the pay station itself, and also at the bollards, the sentry sticks that are at every parking space. And it actually does read the license plate itself off the vehicle.
Okay, so those cameras are close enough to each individual parking space so that they can read the individual license plates for all the spaces?
Yes, they are.
There's bollards every spot, basically. The cameras between the bollards and the stations, there's cameras at every spot. And that aspect has been tested and it works extremely well. And the information you get on who's parking where is very helpful, so we know what meters are being utilized and which ones aren't.
Okay, all right, I get it now, thanks.
Real quick, just another question on my end. Currently right now, when people get a ticket, they have the option to take the ticket, put the money in it, put it in the city drop box, if it's a $10 ticket, or they go to the court and pay it, which sometimes people do, or they pay it online. And what's been very frustrating to me is this arrangement that we have where you get a $10 parking ticket, over meter parking ticket, and then you have to pay another $2 or $1.50 or $1.75 because of the gov.pay, service that we have to pay online. So it's like insult to injury. I got a ticket, I'm mad about it. Now I'm going to pay it right away on my mobile phone before I go to bed tonight. No, you want another $1.50? Come on. So with this, if they don't have the opportunity to pay the ticket immediately because it's being mailed to them, How does that work in terms of, paying online and all that? Because, the fee and fine stay the same and there's no additional upcharge to pay it online?
I can tell you, well, let me address a couple things first. You said they don't have the option to pay it immediately, but in fact, they do with these pay stations. So two things can happen. It's a very bright LED light that notifies them that when they return to their vehicle that they're in violation. If they're not over the max time of 2 hours, say, they can actually just pay the difference and avoid a violation altogether. If they are over the max time and in violation, they can pay immediately right at the meter. That is an option that's for them.
Okay.
As far as the online payment that you made reference to, I've looked at our website and I've also looked at the online, and I think that actually can be improved upon as well. I've seen others that other cities have, and I think they're much more user friendly than what we're currently using, and that's something we're exploring as well.
But Mr. Frey, if the ticket comes to, let's say, their house because they don't notice the meter, it's cold out, they just jump in their car, they take off, they leave, they didn't notice the red flashing, because I don't know that I would look to the meter, I would look to my windshield. I mean, that's just kind of, eventually over time people would understand, but so they get home a week later, they get a ticket in the mail and it says you're over your 2-hour limit, it's $10. I guess if they wrote a $10 check and mailed it in, that would just be $10, but they would still basically the current process would be in place for them to pay it. They'd have to go to gov.pay or whatever it is and pay the fine just as they do today. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So,
Well, Keith, do they pay that through MPS initially? Or do they pay it through us initially?
Depends on how we set it up.
Okay, so potentially the initial violation could be paid through MPS, right?
Potentially.
Okay. So I guess that's something, Mayor, it's something we're looking into and trying to resolve.
okay. I saw Commissioner Douglas and then Commissioner Colo.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Just a quick question, not so much about MPS and their technology, but about physical conditions. Would we, while we're replacing these meter heads, also be looking at the height of the meter and the ability of people of all heights to read it? Because I hear from, short people who can't even see the meter in order to pay what they're supposed to pay. And of course, on the flip side, you make it shorter and a tall person has to stoop down to read it. So can we make sure that as we are, or if we go forward with these changes, we also look at the physical accessibility of our meters?
I can tell you yes, it's one of the very important features that with the selling points. And if you look at the test site, you can see they're very readable. They're easily for someone with mobility issues, someone who's shorter or taller. That problem is resolved by this system for sure.
Thank you.
Commissioner Colo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, so I emailed you a lot of questions today. I just want to go over some of them really quick. Actually, after listening to the presentation, first I have a question for Mr. Gillum. And the thing that really caught me is the automatic ticket being mailed out. And that just seems so off-putting. No matter what public campaign we put out there, anyone who just gets a ticket at home, I think it's going to be off-putting. But I thought this is why we did away with red light cameras, because tickets couldn't just be mailed; they had to be issued. So, Mr. Gillum, can you just go through the process behind that?
Well, there's a difference between a moving violation and the red light camera you're talking about. That's something that specifically isn't allowed for under Michigan law. But the kind of a parking violation that we're talking about here is something different. And so the issuance of a ticket by someone other than an actual officer who witnesses the violation isn't a problem under Michigan law. So.
I would add that with this system, it requires a city employee to come in the morning and verify every violation. So they look at the violation, confirm that the license plate itself matches the violation, and just confirm that information. So that's part of the issuing process.
Could we, if we decide to, could we just turn off that functionality and have our staff continue to issue tickets based on what's?
No, because that's part of how they pay for the system itself.
Okay.
So if we want to move this way, that aspect is part and parcel to this whole proposal. So
Okay.
again, that's an issue that a lot of people might raise a concern, and if we think that's a deal killer, we can go in a different direction.
Okay. So then, and this is for on-street parking only, right? This does not cover any of our parking lots. This is only on-street.
Right now, it's for on-street parking. They do have a solution. We have some issues with our kiosks and our, how user-friendly our kiosks are, and so we could have a solution where they do the same thing in parking lots. We were considering testing that at the new city hall, but we kind of just put a pin in that for now. So right now we want to, if we move forward, let's get the street parking done, make sure it works before we expanded it to the parking lots.
So then I think if there might be 2 or 3 parking lots downtown that have the 2G meters in them, those would have to be replaced then come December or January 1, correct?
Yes.
So we'd have some capital investment there. So then, also, and this is, kind of gets into the timing of it. It's very fast. We are being told in the last week of October that by January 1st, 800 parking meters going bad in the city. And there might be this solution here, but how do we, we can't install these in 2 months, right? Like even if by the time we get to bond council, by the time we approve it, by the time I think it's going, all the wires have to be cut and buried into cement. We're not going to get this up and going by January 1st, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Personally, I'm not like, I like the idea of this. I just don't think this is the solution. So I'm not there right now. Thanks, Chief.
Commissioner Macy.
Okay, I have a couple questions too. One question is about, so again, this automatic ticketing, which I hadn't known about. And then you talked about the 50% compliance with the ones that we're testing out, the pilot. And I have a sense that a fair number of those people who are not compliant are probably ones who are running to pick up takeout or just, jumping in and out of something and thinking like, they aren't going to catch me, right? So, and I'm wondering if, like, especially during COVID, when we have a lot of people who are concerned about takeout, is it possible to set it so that no ticket is issued for the first 10 minutes, but then between 10 minutes and 2 hours if they don't pay? Like, do we have that kind of flexibility, or is that not permitted?
I'll let Keith answer that. I know there is an option to set up a quick spot, like someone popping in and out, like the 30 minute or deal. But Keith, is that an option for us?
Yeah, there's 2 things there. One is in working like maybe with the DEA and trying to promote our local businesses, if it's decided that maybe one space in every block we'd like dedicated to just loading or unloading, we could actually set that up so that it would be even 15 minutes free if that's what we so desired. And then anything over that would be ticketed. So yes, those options are there. The other one would be, and you made reference to, I think it's probably described as a grace period of say maybe 10 minutes. They're moving they would like to make it 5 minutes, but I know in other cities there is 10 minutes, and I think 10 minutes is probably a little bit fairer. Then we don't have to worry about some of those complaints we might otherwise be getting.
Okay, and then I'm going to move right to because you gave me a good segue. So it sounds like you have talked to some other cities that have implemented this system, and you've given us a couple of their lessons learned. What else have you learned from them about their experiences with MPS?
Actually, MPS learned some of the same things up front, and that was that to roll this out, they had one city out east that they rolled this out and started enforcement right away. and they did not have a good public relations campaign, and they were almost doomed from failure from the very start. That's critical or crucial. Anytime you're talking about changing the way of doing business, which is really what we're looking at here. So in that regard, I think that that's crucial, that we do our homework beforehand and we make sure the public is very much aware of the upcoming change if we decide to go in this direction. Some of the other issues that were brought up were more technology associated, and I'm still working through some of those to make sure that those are properly addressed as well.
Okay. Mr. Brake?
Mr. Brake, you had a...
Yeah, if I can make a comment, kind of from my experience of the previous community where I served, our parking system and that community went through an automation system, and just automatically across the board, revenues did go up because you have greater uniformity. Right now, we have different meters in different areas and alike, and so I would really encourage the commission that's look at the convenience side of things and not focus on the penalty end of things, because we are having more and more instances where individuals are not paying for parking, which is not fair to the system, and you're burdening certain individuals and kind of rewarding people who don't pay their fair share. Also, through this automation is that it's less labor intensive of having so many people that they have to go out and actually see and enforce. So there again, as more of these systems, as the chief alluded to, that you know, on highway systems that are going on toll roads, that's becoming more of a uniform practice in the industry. So for anyone that travels would be familiar with that. I would agree that with the education component that goes with that, we may not have this up in January, but the chief alluded to with the Henry Ford Health System, they're looking at opening up their building in February. So we would be timely in that respect of if we could have that up and running, that we have a consistent system as opposed to doing a piecemeal. So I can tell you from working in a parking system that used the similar hardware, it wasn't the same program, but the same hardware, it made a significant difference of making a fair and consistent system. And you know, that should be emphasized as part of this, that and we're not the only ones in Michigan, and perhaps when we come back that we can give you examples of other communities that are using this MPS system. So we've, from a staff level, we've been talking about this for the last 2 months, and you know, kind of covering these same hard questions. And from my experience of working with a pretty similar parking system in my last job, but there's some similarities. So I would endorse this. I think don't get so hung up on it's not a punitive system, that more of this look at the added features of the convenience of, you know, if you're looking for a parking space, that it can guide you through that. And for, here's a complaint I do hear from individuals that are fearful that they're out for an evening and afraid of a meter running out while they're at dinner, and they're preoccupied with racing back to the meter and feeding it so they don't end up with a ticket. This automated system is convenient for those individuals. If you want to have a night out, relax, and the automated system will cover you for that amount of time, so you're not constantly looking at your watch. So look at the positive side of things, and as this has given us good feedback and can provide you, you know, some of these added elements to bring some closure. So.
Thank you, Mr. Brake. And I think, as everyone knows, you know, parking is sort of a hot topic here in Royal Oak. Sometimes we get a bad reputation. It's amazing. Someone will get a $10 ticket. They're clearly, you know, in the wrong, and it'll be the motivation for them to just hate Royal Oak for the rest of their life. I'm never coming back. I hate life. It's crazy. I mean, I don't understand it. But that's the world we live in today. You know, if you don't sing my hymn, I'm burning the whole church down. And that happens, and parking has been part of that negative stereotype, no matter how much we've had to combat it. So for me, I think if I were to give my input, I would look at this and say, helps us in a lot of regards, right? I think the only thing that kind of sticks out is the sort of automatic totalitarian enforcement. And so communication, messaging around that becomes critical and key. I like Commissioner Macy's idea, if we go forward, that there is somewhat of a grace period. The whole reason why we charge for parking is to keep circulation. It's there to help our businesses. And if people can come quick 10 minutes, get their takeout and leave or whatever, you know, in the middle of the day, we don't want to, you know, eliminate that what's working for those businesses right now. What we do want to do is stop the folks that are parking there for 4 hours in front of their businesses and you know, tying up those parking spots, which is a hindrance. So it's a delicate balance to get, but I think having some of that flexibility in whoever we go with is critical. I think, you know, it'd be important to me to understand what our communication plan is. So, you know, what can and can't we communicate? Can we inform people, hey, if you're going to be here longer than 2 hours, you might want to consider going to the parking deck right here. It's easy, it's convenient, it's covered. You know, if somebody gets a ticket, who issues the ticket? What's the messaging? Can we take something that's negative and do our best to turn it into something positive? Can we give and I know we have all these bond covenants, but maybe the DDA funds it. You know, if they want to offer people, first-time violators, a free token to park in our garage for, you know, the next month, you know, give them incentive to use the garage and things like that. I have a feeling that might be against NPS's desirability because they want people to park in meters and get violations, but you know, this is a two-way, it has to work for both parties, right? The other is, you know, do we have the ability, and maybe this happens in the first month, but since we can read the plates, can we offer like a first time, you know, warning ticket, you know, or a reduced ticket or something like that, you know, for the plate the first time? I know some of these are legal questions, Mr. Gillum, but, you know, can you say, hey, you know, because this is a new system for the first year, anybody that gets a ticket, the first one is a warning. You know, after that, you know, you pay the normal fine. I'm sure that probably has some revenue implications and things like that, but I'm throwing out these ideas to say, okay, if you're going to go with the totalitarian approach, which we've been trying to fight, you know, we've issued, people only think about the ticket they've gotten, they don't think about all the tickets that were never written. How do we make sure that we don't disrupt you know, that image, and how do we influence people to better park that, you know, fits the goals of our community, fits the fact that we want people in parking garages and that they're safe and clean and good and convenient and cheaper. And then finally, maybe my last, this is more of a question, I don't know if it can be answered today, but since this uses low volt electricity, you know, we're gonna have to tear up the cement. And I know we've done a lot of work in the DDA, in the downtown area, laying down new cement and sidewalks and things of that nature. Is this really gonna be like, I mean, I've seen the test ones there, there's an electrical strip, but if that all has to go under, I mean, how are we tapping into, I imagine the light posts, we're tapping into that electrical, you know, power, but, you know, are we gonna chunk away, or are we gonna, you know, replace whole blocks of cement? So I'd be curious to know, I wouldn't want to have all of a sudden our sidewalks look like, you know, brand new sidewalks look like a patchwork, you know, that, I mean, it sounds, you know, a little vain, but, you know, if we have brand new sidewalks in and we're tearing up, you know, a little trench and then we slop some cement to patch it, it's not going to look that good. So, you know, understanding the installation a little bit more from that perspective would be helpful as well.
I can answer that.
And I think that we also want to have some flexibility if we ever want to remove any of the spots. We're seeing, especially in this COVID world, that, you know, Royal Oak is starting to turn into and capitalize on outdoor dining. Yeah, it's not perfect. We had some things to figure out and what it's going to look like, but it's going to be evolving. And maybe one day we close down a side of a street for a summer, you know, and that's going to be lost revenue to the parking system. It's going to be lost revenue to MPS. Clearly the patrons would, or the petitioners would rent that space from the city, but all those things need to be thought about because they're thought about, because we don't want to take, I mean, the last thing we want to do is take away our options in a contract that, you know, take away our flexibility to do what's right for our community, even though we're getting all these conveniences and efficiencies. So I think if we shore up some of those things, this becomes a more interesting idea to me. Commissioner Macy.
A few more questions. Although I'd like to hear the answer. I think Mr. Frey said he had a response to what the mayor just said, so I'm curious to hear what that was too.
I did, in reference to the concern that he voiced about the sidewalks. And he, obviously, he was over at the test site because he saw it was on top of the sidewalks. But what it is they use a micro cut. It's a fine saw blade that they cut, and what they run from meter to meter is a Cat 5 or Cat 7, like an Ethernet cable. And then that's covered with an epoxy. And that's it. It's not, there isn't any kind of heavy excavation or anything like that into the sidewalks.
So one thing Mr. Brake was talking about was consistency, and I do agree. Of the 1,500 meters, how many do we think we would be replacing with this MPS? Because I heard that it doesn't work for those that are outside of the immediate downtown. I think I heard the outlying areas. So what percent would we think would be doing that? And then would we have a different system for the lots if we don't also do MPS? So would we be running two systems? That also is something I'm hearing.
Right now, we actually run a variety of devices because we don't even have all the same kiosks in the lots. We have a number of different kiosks. We have a number of different meters. And what Mr. Brake referenced, as far as I think the closer you can get to uniformity, the less confusion there is with the public, the more familiar they are with the devices. So in answer to your question, I think what would be proposed is we would start with the street meters if we were to go with this system, and then we would move into the lots. The meters that we currently have that people are familiar with already, one of the three, would be moved to the peripheral areas that are less used and are lower volume. I don't see, I'd have to look at, and this is one thing that you get into, and I think I referenced in the memo that I sent. We have meters in some areas of the city that it cost us $400 or $500 for the meter, and they only draw maybe $60 a year in usage. For those types of situations, it doesn't make sense for us to even have a meter there. And that's part of this overall program in looking at this. And I understand from a historical perspective why that might have been, but I also think maybe things have changed a little bit, or maybe they were put in just because we wanted to cover every space that was in a designated area. But it would take a lot of shifting around and moving the meters to areas that we still would use those. And I know that's not a direct answer to your question, but it's still evolving.
Do you have a sense of how many MPS meters would be required? Like the number?
Won't yet. Not as of yet.
And then Mr. Brick also was talking about how this would be, helpful labor-wise. So we have parking enforcement officers right now. Would this be a reduction in our staff if we move to this system?
That remains to be seen. I think our initial intent would be to utilize those parking enforcement officers to do the reviews and the verification of the tickets during the following day. And then we're still working through areas of the city. As you're aware, there's street parking, there's parking lots, there's parking garages, and then there's also angled parking like on Washington. And because this uses license plate recognition, the angled parking poses a slightly different variant that I think would probably still require parking enforcement officers for. The difference would be, though, those parking enforcement officers, instead of wandering around looking for violations, the system has the ability to tell them what the violations are. So it's more like a directed patrol rather than a random patrol. So in an area like Washington, it would tell them that, hey, there's a vehicle parked in a parking space and it's over its time limit, but it can't provide the license plate number because it had no way of reading the license plate. So in those areas, we still would utilize parking enforcement officers.
They would still have the bollards, but we would need the officers to write the tickets.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, no, just to clarify, I think, yes, we would see a reduction in staff. We're actually low on parking enforcement officers currently. So I don't know that we wouldn't have to fill some positions that are open currently, I think, but there would be a reduction in staff, I think, without question.
Okay. And then, so, these bollards are taking pictures that they're sending to as part of the tickets. What's happening with this data after that? So this is, now suddenly there's cameras literally are lining the street, watching and taking pictures. What happens to the data after it's used for the ticketing?
That actually is a good question. I kind of anticipated that might come. That data is actually it's owned by the city. It's not owned by the company. It's owned by the city, and it would be governed the same as we do right now with other data that we have. Chief, I don't even know what the retention policy currently is for.
Yeah, we would follow whatever the record retention policy for that type of data. The state sets those kind of things. But the important thing is that data isn't sold or utilized, so no one else would have access to it.
Well, I think some people will complain if we have it too, but I mean, that would be something to know in the end, is like how long that's being kept, like whatever their policy is. Sorry.
Yeah, we'd have to set that up. We'd do it just similar to like we do body cams. We set up a retention period and it become automatic. And I have to find out what, I'm guessing there's a state regulation on how long we have to keep it and when we can get rid of it.
And I think this is my last question, is I just was wondering if, and Mr. Briggs sort of did this already, but if you could state the motivation for going for a really complex system like this. I think some of it has been stated already, like I said, but there are other options, obviously, that would just be like, the simple bollards that don't have a camera, and then there's a pay station, which I imagine would be simpler and cheaper, but don't have all of these enforcement options and flexibility options. So I just was wondering if you could state briefly why you're thinking about this rather than some perhaps simpler and more consistent options, but.
Well, if I could answer that for Keith, what we tasked Keith to do when we hired him is to organize our parking system. The whole parking system kind of grew as the city grew, and there were different silos, and it wasn't really thought out. So when DPS would order kiosks, they wouldn't consider, well, how do we actually enforce those meters? And so that was a problem, and we were able to kind of resolve it. And Keith has done a good job with that. This system, because we're in a little bit of an unknown time, it requires no capital output at all. I'm reluctant to invest a lot of money into a new system that makes a lot of promises, but then we've got to maintain and operate it. What I like about this is it's in MPS's best interest that the system works as advertised. Whereas if we would just buy something, it may or may not work as advertised, but we bought it, we probably have a maintenance agreement or something. I think initially Keith was looking at the less expensive smart meters, and MPS came across his plate and he started researching it, and the idea took legs. So that's kind of how we got here.
Okay, thank you. And I agree with that, although I feel like the MPS won't have to deal as much with the complaints. Those will come to us, of course.
Yeah, for sure.
I think I'm interested as well in pursuing this option. I feel like I would be more interested if this were in fact a citywide system that involved the lots, because I'm feeling like it's going to be a challenge, that there will be some places that will still be enforced by parking officers, and then some will be mailed tickets to the home. I'm a little anxious about the fact that it won't be consistent. We're doing something that is more draconian than people are expecting, but only for a certain area of the downtown. So I'm also very interested in exploring the flexible options that this gives us, like including the signs that we can display and the ability to use different length of parking at different areas, maybe even at different times of the year. So I'm hoping that MPS will be flexible with us, and I'm going to be interested in what the requirements of the contract will be, since they're covering half of the fees that come in, and how flexible we're able to be. That's all.
Well, I will tell you, if that's important that we're under the same system, I'm sure MPS would love to get our lots at the same time. So, if that's what we're hearing, I think we could tell them, well, we want to look at more of a holistic view rather than the street meters. I was trying to keep it simple, but we'll give it a shot.
Commissioner Lavasser, then Commissioner Perush, and then Commissioner Colo.
Yeah, a couple concerns here. And forgive me while I disconnect this other audio here.
There's
Couple
two
cons-
Commissioner Levasseurs.
There's two. You get two for the price of one tonight.
We get the front view and the side view. We can make a full image now.
I did not mean to turn on my video. There we go. All right. Any type of system we adopt, the focus should be on making the experience more pleasant for our visitors to our downtown, making it more convenient for them to pay for their parking, making it easier for them if they need to put a little extra time in the meter, so to speak. That's got to be our focus. My concerns here is there's a lot of elements of Big Brother here, which may be a PR nightmare for us. And when we're partnering up with a company whose objective is to maximize their revenues and has little concern for our PR, then that could be a problem for us if we're not able to make adjustments to the system because of our contract with them, and it would interfere with their ability to squeeze every dime they could out of the system. I do like the suggestion of Commissioner Macy that we not be overzealous in issuing ticket because someone happened to pull up to the side of a mailbox, got out of their car, put a piece of mail in the box, then left 30 seconds later, and zing, they get a ticket in the mail 10 days later. I'd be very cautious with a system that's overzealous like this. It's got elements of Big Brother to it. I certainly would not be comfortable committing to something like this under pressure because, by golly, we got to move by December 31st. I don't feel comfortable at all taking this big of a step in that short period of time.
Commissioner Pruitt?
If I could just weigh in, I want to make it clear, we're not going to be ready for this MPS by December 31st. So we're not asking for that. We're going to have to buy some IPS meters to get us to where we need to be. But we're still, kind of fleshing out this project. So we're not trying to use that deadline as pressure for us to just make something happen. If it's not right for us, we don't want to recommend it.
Just a quick point on Commissioner Levasseur's point. I'm sorry, Commissioner Pruitt. Is this the only business model that MPS has? Do we still have the option where we could just buy the meters where we don't have this split of parking violations if that's the issue? Like if we want to have more control over that, that'd be something also maybe to look into.
Keith, you got an answer? Keith, do you got an answer for that one?
Yeah,
Sorry.
to my knowledge, this is their business plan. It kind of makes them a little bit exceptional compared to what else is out there. They're that confident in their product.
Yeah, it's very tempting with no fixed cost up front that, if we have, the ability through the parking fund to front the bill, there's no sense in paying their profits if they're willing to take a more secure contract without the variability. And we have the flexibility to be 100% in control of our enforcement and not have to give up that parking revenue. And Commissioner Levasseur brings up a good point. I mean, they make their money on parking violations and parking meter fees. And, regardless of how much we try to communicate that to the public, it might not be interpreted the right way. So just a thought to throw that out there as an alternative to them. Commissioner Pruitt, sorry.
That's okay. Just a couple of things. I had some of the same anxieties that Commissioner Macy has about how the program will work overall. And those are things that we're just going to have to work through going forward. And ultimately we'll decide either there's something that we can manage and overcome or not. And then we're going to choose a different system. I know that the COVID delays in dealing with this issue of a couple of months really hurt us and, pushed us closer to the deadlines that we have. And I appreciate the chief saying that we're not going to use December 31st as an artificial deadline to push a decision one way or another by that point. I also agree that we're going to need a tremendous, aggressive, well thought out, well planned, very detailed public relations campaign once this starts, or once the system goes into being. Just because it is going to be a completely different system for a number of people. It's going to have a lot of new features that are going to be not like anything else that they've seen anywhere else. And they're going to need a period of time of education in order to get used to it. I think a grace period for ticketing probably is appropriate because of that, because no matter how aggressive and detailed your education program is, there's some people who just don't get the message for whatever reason. But on the other hand, you don't want to turn people away from coming into the city just because they get one bad experience. So I guess at this point, I'm comfortable going forward with the process that the administration is going through in terms of fleshing this out and getting us more information and getting more details and working on some of the issues that we've raised this evening. And then hopefully bringing it back to us in the appropriate time frame, if it's ever ready, in whatever time that they think is appropriate. So I'm comfortable at this point moving forward with working with this particular potential vendor. But I have some of the same anxieties that have been articulated by some of the other commissioners as well. So I'm not sold completely yet, but I do think we do need a different system, a system that's consistent. I also think that if we can, and if the rest of the commission is comfortable with it, folding the parking lots into the system is a good idea. I think having two separate systems, depending upon where you park, is bound to create a lot of anxiety and unnecessary bad feelings in the community and the people who come to Royal Oak and use the parking system. If it's a completely different system, if they park on the street on 6th Street, or if they turn the corner and park in the lot 2 spaces away, I don't think that's a good thing. So I would be in favor of taking a look at folding the parking lots into the system as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Perush. Before we get to Commissioner Colo, Commissioner, we haven't heard from Commissioner Douglas on the topic, so I'm going to let her take priority here.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So in the 21st century, we achieve productivity and efficiency through technology. And it strikes me that this is one of those places where we can achieve those results through technology, because the old school way of collecting money for parking, meters and parking attendants and pieces of paper and so on and so forth, seems to me to be sort of globally unsustainable. Larger cities may have the capacity to develop their own software, to work with developers, to develop custom systems. I don't think we're that size city. And so I acknowledge all of the day-to-day concerns that other commissioners have, but I just generally feel like this approach, whether it's this company or another, and I'm trusting that our staff have researched this thoroughly and that they feel that this vendor has the best solution, because the technologies that are going to help us are in the hands of the private sector. And I think this is a case where just generally and philosophically, I support the idea of purchasing technology, partnering in a public-private partnership with a company that has the technology that can help us in the long run save money on staffing, perhaps generate additional revenue, and provide a more 21st century technology solution to our customers.
Thank you, Commissioner Douglas. Commissioner Colo.
Thank you. So first, one thing I had not considered when we started talking about this was the Henry Ford healthcare system and the strain that's going to put on street parking. So, thank you, Chief, for bringing that to our attention. That is something to consider in how we move forward. I just have a couple questions throughout this conversation. Chief, you had told me, we said that we couldn't meter enforce these bollards, that they had to go through the MPS system. But then Mr. Frey also said that on Washington Street, because of the angled parking, they would have to be meter enforced. So is there a way to, talk to MPS and do meter enforcement so that we don't have automatic tickets issued? Or what's the difference? Like, how's that determined?
Well, they won't be MPS meters on where they have the angle parking because the front of the vehicles generally pull in there, so they don't get the plate.
So then it's essentially.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, those would be. Those would be just the standard, smart meters, and those would have to have a parking enforcement officer deal with them.
So what we're really talking about then is Main Street and the side number streets, essentially.
Well, just off the top of my head, I think everywhere except those couple blocks of angled parking on Washington.
Okay. So those would be the smart meters that we would buy.
Yes.
Okay. So, and then the mayor made a comment, and I'm not quite sure we hit on it, but we do have a lot of parking spaces being used as patios right now. A move we might want to extend to permit status next year. How would we do that if we do go with MPS and decide that spaces will then be leased out and no longer exist?
That's covered in the contract, would have some flexibility, but those would be details in the contract would have to resolve. I think the idea would be is if we take up some street meter parking, we're just pushing the demand out a little bit. So we should have the same or maybe increased need for parking, the more desirable it is for people to come down here. So the current outdoor service areas will be part of the initial assessment, but there is a process for if we want to eliminate or expand the system.
Okay. Yeah, because I think that'd be important. I think that next spring's could be very, this winter is we'll see a lot of good ideas hopefully come out of the restaurants and the GDA on how they can utilize that space for a post-COVID world. So I'd be really, I want to make sure that whatever system we choose is flexible around that. And then my last question is, I think this is kind of obvious, but I'm not sure. Right now, if you get a parking ticket, the mayor once again talked about that $10, you can pay it. He talked about in the sense of paying it online. I take a $10 bill if I happen to have one in my pocket and just go down and pay it at the courthouse. That low fee for the first 72 hours would essentially go away, right? For these spots, it's you don't have that pay early ability.
The fees would have to figure that aspect out, and I don't know that we vetted that all the way out yet. But yes, the pay early option isn't financially feasible for the MPS. So if the initial ticket is what our normal pay early option is, I'm not sure that'll work for MPS.
Okay. And then my last question. Oh, I'm sorry, sir.
No, that was it. Sorry.
Would this use the park? I think it was said this is using the Park mobile app, correct? So we're not switching apps.
It will use the Park mobile app. And you can do that currently on the test site, or their app is much better and will be a lot more features. To get the features of finding the open spot and things like that, you'll need to use their app.
Okay. So, as the conversation goes on, I mean, I could be talked into this. I like the idea of every lot being the same. So if we do it on the streets, I'd rather do it in the lots also so that we have consistency no matter where you are. So I look forward to seeing what, some of these questions that we've had. I think there's a lot of good ones, and hopefully we can get some answers and maybe a little bit more of a write-up too on Plan B. What if it's not this, then that. What that other solution might look like.
Give us a couple choices. It's a good idea. And I will add too that, maybe in the context of all this parking stuff, I don't know how the math works, but if we're going to have a more efficient system to issue tickets, maybe the message to the public is, we look at lowering the parking fine a little bit. So, albeit it's more efficient, and so it increases the likelihood that you're not going to get lucky on a night if you're over. But the overall fine, even if it's a nominal amount, might resonate better with the public if we are going to make it up in, a more efficient model to issue tickets. So just a thought there. I saw Commissioner Perush, their hand up.
Yes, I'm just thinking that in terms of the elimination of the, pay in a very short period of time and it's a lower rate idea, I think you could continue that. You just push the dates out a little bit. If the ticket is issued with a particular date and it's received, like 5 days later or whatever, and don't get me started on the mail service, but assuming that that system works efficiently, I think you just push the dates out. If the date of the ticket is, the first of the month, the ticket could say if you pay it by the 10th of the month, it's $5 or $10. But if you pay it later than that, then it's going to go to $20. I think you could build in an incentive to pay it quickly in terms of the way you date the tickets and when it gets issued. Just like, for example, when you renew your plates on your car. If it's renewed in a certain period of time, it's this, and if you wait a little bit longer, then the cost goes up. I think you could build that into the system and just push the dates out a little bit further.
I'll let Keith weigh in, but I don't think, based on the how much we charge, we actually don't charge that much for our parking tickets. I know my wife got a ticket in Muskegon, and they charge a lot more in Muskegon than we charge here. So, but Keith, I believe that MPS can't work with that. Is that correct?
I actually brought that up in early discussions with them. What they were offering as a possibility of an incentive for, I guess, for discount, if lack of any other term, was paying at the meter. It would be less if you paid at the meter versus, if you were in violation versus getting the citation through the mail. I don't know that it's feasible what you've suggested as far as through the mail, primarily because we can't control the time, especially with the U.S. Postal Service the way it is now. I mean, that's an unknown element.
Well, yeah, I mean, we could talk to Judge Meineke as well and get his feelings on it. In the past, I know I had a conversation with him and I think Don Johnson previously, and you bring up a good point, Keith. But ultimately, if you look at the data, either people pay, you want that incentive for them to pay. And if they don't do it within the first week, pretty much until you start really sending threatening notices, you're not going to get that money unless you focus hard on it. So even if you made it 30 days later to account for mail time, what you're really trying to do is, one, prevent people from overstaying their welcome in that parking spot to keep circulation. So it's not about the revenue. And number two, you get your $10. You know what I mean? If you do the 30-day or even longer, I don't know that, we're going to go bankrupt as a city if we don't get our $10 check, or that MPS would go bankrupt. So it'd be interesting to see, if we extend it out even longer, but then you miss out on the, most people want to just get it off their plate. I just want to be done with this. I'm already mad. I got a ticket. Just let me get done with it right away. And those who wait, they're festering anyways. Just a theory, a hypothesis.
Typically in other jurisdictions, they actually go anywhere from 2 weeks to 30 days, but then at whatever fee it is. And then after that, it usually doubles.
Yeah. What is Keith? What's our, right now it's $10 if you go over a meter, right?
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, you do that in Detroit, it's what, 40 or 60 or something like that?
Well, the nationwide average is about $40.
Yeah. So how do you guys feel about the feedback you've gotten thus far? Is this something that you feel you can continue dialogue with and maybe work with the various alternatives to bring back something to the commission that might be worth carving a little more accurately?
Yeah, I think it's great feedback. I think we know what we have to do, and Keith has got a lot of work in front of him. So good luck with that, Keith.
Yeah, Keith, by the way, nice job, and thank you for your work. I mean, you pretty much have a task that no matter what you do, you can't win. It's not like, guess what? I did great on parking and everyone's so happy they got parking tickets. I mean, there's there's opportunity to improve a situation and make it better for people. But at the end of the day, nobody likes to park. Nobody likes to pay for parking. And nobody likes parking violations. So I don't know how you make folks happy, but we do the best to make them as least unhappy as possible. So good work.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mason.
I just wanted to say quickly that when this comes back before us, it would be great if we could see what the alternative is. Like, this is the kind of the fancy, all the tech alternative. If we feel at the end like, oh, we don't feel anxious about doing this, what would it look like if we did something else? Like, if we just put all IPS meters in, what would the cost be? And, revenue. I mean, it seems, like you said, it takes 2.5 years for them to recoup their revenue, but I mean, we're making a contract for 5 years, so they're going to be having our revenue for the second half of that time. So I guess I would love to see what it would look like both ways if we, when this comes back.
Well, I actually can tell you most of that right now, assuming if we stuck with straight up smart meters. I'm gonna have to pull this up really quick, but if we stuck with IPS and just status quo, 5 years, Keith broke it down, 5 years total cost is about 1.9 million. If the Civic smart meters are as advertised, it's about 1.1 million for all. That's the cost, and it's basically doing business as status quo. The revenue is hard to predict because we're not sure, as businesses kind of flow and things change, it's a little bit hard to predict. If we go with the smart meters, we're hoping the Civic smart meters are as advertised and do the same thing our IPS ones do, and they're about half the price. So, and then if we were to do that, we'd still continue to look at what's next on the horizon or different things. They are kind of continuous improvement kind of thing.
Okay. All right. Have we beat this one to death? All right. No other comments? All right. Now this brings us to item number 13, which is approval of cost sharing agreement, 2nd Street infrastructure improvements.
Mayor and Commissioners, what we're asking you to do tonight is to approve an agreement that we've reached with the DDA and with Central Park Development Agreement for the funding or the cost of the last of the improvements in the portion of 2nd Street between the Henry Ford Medical Office building and the 11-mile parking structure. In going through this process, we feel that we've, number one, saved money, but in addition, the finish of the construction has been more orderly because each of the 3 different parties to the agreement have had different pieces of the puzzle. And it's worked out best for us to have the work done by CPDG's contractors rather than each of us trying to have our own contractors doing the work at various times and having to coordinate phasing of the work and inspections amongst really 3 different parties. So if you have specific questions about the agreement, I'd be happy to try to answer those. You've been provided with a resolution of approval. We would recommend approval of the cost sharing agreement with the DDA and CPDG.
Questions for Mr. Gillum? It's pretty straightforward. Commissioner Colo. Commissioner Colo, do you have is your mic working? Can't. Unless you're practicing be the world's greatest mime. We'll give him a second.
I promise you I will try not to leave my house for future meetings. If y'all can hear me now, I was trying to move approval to keep this going.
Are you move for approval?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I do. Yes.
Is there a second? second by Commissioner Newbuck. All right, discussion. All right, with no discussion, I'll call for the vote. Commissioner Colo,
Yes.
Commissioner Perush,
Yes.
Commissioner Lavasser,
Yes.
Commissioner Newbuck,
Yes.
Commissioner Macy,
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay. All right, give me a second here, folks. Okay, this brings us to approval of employment agreements, Fire Chief Employment Agreement and Assistant Fire Chief Employment Agreement. Mr. Gillum.
Mayor and Commissioners, both Fire Chief Cummins and Assistant Chief Jim Cook have been eligible to retire for a little while. They've expressed an interest in continuing to work here at the city. In addition, in light of everything else that's going on, the pandemic and other things, from the administration standpoint, we think that there's a lot to be said for maintaining their experience and continuity as we try to work through the rest of this year and figure out whatever the new normal is going to be going forward. So what you have before you tonight are a pair of employment agreements, each for a period of 4 years, that would allow Chief Cummins and Assistant Chief Cook to continue their employment with the City of Royal Oak in the positions they're in right now, at a reduced rate of pay while receiving their pension benefits, which again, they're otherwise eligible for. This is something that has been discussed and reviewed extensively with Labor Council, with Howard Schiffman. This type of in-service distribution for public safety employees who are over the age of 50 is specifically authorized by federal law. So we're not breaking any rules here. Again, we're just bringing keeping the two of them here at a reduced level of pay, but at the same time, allowing them to receive their pension benefits while they continue to work. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer those. Again, I've provided you with one resolution, which would approve the agreement with Chief Cummins, and a second resolution, which would approve the agreement with Assistant Chief Cook.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Gillum? Commissioner Perush.
I'll move approval of the fire chief employment agreement.
We have a motion by Commissioner Perush, second by Commissioner Douglas. Discussion. All right, no discussion. Okay. I'll call for the vote. Commissioner Colo?
Yes.
Commissioner Perush?
Yes.
Commissioner Lavasser? We can't hear you.
I'm not the only one, thankfully.
You're not the only one. No.
How about now?
Now we can hear you.
All right, I vote yes.
Okay. Which is unusual because I said that we couldn't hear you, which would indicate that I could, but I read your lips. So, Commissioner Newbuck.
Yes.
Commissioner Macy.
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay. That's for the contract for the chief. Commissioner Perush.
I'll move approval of the resolution approving the assistant fire chief employment contract.
Motion by Commissioner Perush. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Newbuck. Discussion? All right, I'll call for the vote. I'll start with Commissioner Douglas.
Yes.
Commissioner Macy.
Yes.
Commissioner Newbuck.
Yes.
Commissioner Lavasser.
Yes.
Commissioner Perush.
Yes.
Commissioner Colo.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay. That brings us to what used to be item number 16, which is now item 15, which is an update on the amendments to the Open Meetings Act and revised practice of electronic meetings for boards and commissions. Mr. Gillum.
Commissioners, maybe I'll lead off on this and then Mr. Brake can jump in. So as indicated in the memo that he and I put together at the end of last week and provided you with, a flurry of activity last week in the legislature and then in the governor's office. And the governor on Friday finally went ahead and approved the amendments to the Open Meetings Act that will allow what we're going to call remote meetings, or really the legislation calls electronic meetings, to continue for the near future anyway. Generally speaking, electronic meetings are allowed for basically any reason for the balance of this year, that is through the end of December of 2020. In 2021, remote meetings will be allowed to account for members of boards and committees that are on active military duty. That's nothing new. There's been a provision in the Open Meetings Act for that for some period of time. But the new wrinkles, if you will, that have been added, the act will allow open meetings next year to accommodate someone who has a medical condition, or in the event of a state or local disaster or state of emergency, when conducting an in-person meeting would pose a risk or a danger to the well-being of either the public or the members of the public body. So again, we're good to go for the rest of this year, subject to certain restrictions or requirements. Electronic meetings will be permitted next year. The procedures that we've been following up to this point in time, for the most part, will need to remain in effect. There are a couple wrinkles that have been added in addition. For example, as Commissioner Douglas noted tonight, when members are absent from the meeting going forward, they'll have to indicate why it is that they're attending remotely, whether it's because they're out of the jurisdiction, if because they generally have a medical condition. If you're on active military duty, you're not required to indicate that, but otherwise you do have to indicate why you're absent and why it is, or where it is you're physically located at the time. So with that in mind, I think Mr. Brake has developed some guidelines or some plans going forward. I would indicate that the amendments to the Act do require the Commission to adopt certain policies and procedures in order for us to be able to continue to have electronic meetings. That's the draft of a policy and procedure that I put together based upon the new Public Act that was attached to the memo. Those can be added to, those can be tweaked, those can be changed. The only thing that we can't have in there is anything that's contrary to the provisions in the Open Meetings Act. So if there are things that we may want to consider changing down the road, that's fine. But at a minimum, we do need to approve some kind of a policy and procedure tonight. So the Commission will be able to continue to meet on an electronic basis, and all the other city boards and committees will be able to meet on an electronic basis in the meantime.
So with that, I'm happy to continue the conversation, really looking at the implementation of allowing these different boards and commissions to operate. You know, we started out in mid-March and operating into the system of this Zoom platform. And what becomes awkward is allowing public comment. We probably have heard anecdotally of instances of this new term called Zoom bombing, where because of the security, that there's issues that come about where activities that are not conducive for the public business. So as a result, there's only so many hours in the day that we can do a dual, conduct a Zoom meeting and also broadcast live through WROK. What we're looking at now is a different system. So we have 31 different groups. 5 of the primary boards and commissions will continue under this Zoom platform, where we have a time reserved where individuals can call in under public comment, and they're replayed and broadcast as we conduct this live. There are 26 other boards and commissions that previously were not televised. The majority of them were not televised and really don't need to be. But unfortunately, because there's not enough hours in the day, that they've had to suspend their meetings. I think to have those groups engaged, there's other public work that needs to be conducted, is looking at a similar Zoom platform. It's called Zoom Webinar, in that we would, starting next month, have those groups meet under that format, but they would not be broadcast on TV. So for a member of the public, that we comply under the Open Meetings Act, where anyone that wants to view those various boards and commissions, providing the web address, or this technical term called a URL. So you can put that URL, but if you want to view the meeting and participate and perhaps comment, that you attend during that time, and view it through your computer. Whereas the regular Zoom would, again, have that dual feature of broadcasting without logging in, or for those that have the cable company that broadcasts, you can view it at home. We're exploring, not to make this more confusing, this Zoom webinar. We do have the ability to record that and play back, so that it would be a delayed recording. But the advantage of the Zoom webinar is that if we have concurrent meetings, if we have a sufficient subscription, that we can have meetings that have overlapping meeting dates. And so that's a suggestion of moving that forward. Was challenged the staff look at other communities and what they're doing, and that's what the suggestion that we start bringing back these groups is. In addition to that, as the health standards allow, where we can conduct in-person meetings and space out and social distance, because we'll probably be working in this environment. Again, these smaller boards and commissions perhaps can meet in person and can post the meetings if someone wants to attend in person. But for the foreseeable future, we're looking at this webinar type of format that ordinarily they don't have as much participation. That's not to diminish the importance by any means, but so we have the ability of bringing back in these advisory boards that they can now conduct the public's business, and that we can do it in such a way that it's not taking up the bandwidth of WROK. But if there's someone that has an interest in the foundation and the animal shelter, that they can participate through the computer and log in through the Zoom webinar format, and able to view, and when there's appropriate time to give public comment. So that is the proposal that we're bringing forward. But as Mr. Gillum has alluded to, the only official action that needs to be taken is the approval of this guideline that would be compliant with PA 228.
Just a quick question for Mr. Gillum, and I apologize. I know based on the way the act was written, at least for our meeting, if we're all doing this electronically, we have to give a reason as to why we're participating electronically. I presume that we don't, at the beginning of roll call, because it's a public health issue right now, that we have to explain why 100% of the commissioners and staff are participating electronically, correct? Or do we have to make some sort of announcement at the beginning of every meeting that, you know, in continuation of the, you know, not to get too technical, but I just, you know, the way things are working these days. It seems like everything's challenged in court.
Yeah, we actually provide an explanation in the meeting notice that we post on the agenda,
Correct.
our agenda. But my recommendation would be for you as the mayor, as the one who's directing the meeting, just to make a brief statement at the start as to why it is we're conducting an electronic meeting. Again, it may be belt and suspenders, but for something like that, better to be safe than sorry.
Okay. Commissioner Macy.
Thank you. So first of all, I want to give a shout out to Ms. Schwanger, who has been, as far as I know, running all of these meetings practically every night for months and months and months. So I don't think she quit her day job, and yet she now also has a night job, and I really, really appreciate her. And that leads to my question, which is, I'm hoping she doesn't still have to attend all of these, but I've experienced some of these Zoom webinars, both at work and also the school board has been running these as well. And it seems like there's someone who still is in charge of managing it, like managing the public comment. Who would be assigned to do that for each of these meetings? I also have a small correction. It says Parks and Recreation. It's actually Parks and Recreation and Senior Services Advisory Board. Just to note that those meetings have been happening, will continue.
So, Mayor, if I may answer that. Commissioner Macy is spot on. What we would be looking at doing is training other staff that you do need to have a moderator, or it could be a board member that would do dual function. Say if there's like a board secretary, for instance, they would be the moderator. But in most instances, if there is a staff function, staff support function, then it would be someone would be controlling that. So that'll take some time. I don't want to oversell this because for someone that's not familiar with Zoom, the limited time that I've used it, it's pretty easy. But nevertheless, it can be disruptive to a meeting if someone does not have that technology aptitude. So there is an amount of doing internal training. This is how it works, and some coordination to also post the meeting that would have that web address or that URL. So there's definitely some moving parts that on the back channels that we would have to coordinate.
All right, Commissioner Douglas and then Commissioner Perush.
So I think the list of committees does not include the Crime Prevention Council, so I would modify, if necessary, the memo here to include them. And then I would move approval of the resolution as proposed.
Motion by Commissioner Douglas. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Macy. All right, discussion. Commissioner Douglas.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And what I say here will probably make the next item on the agenda. We have some dedicated, passionate committee members on the list that is shown in this memo. And these are committees that play a valuable role to the city and are passionate about the contribution that they make. As the city manager has pointed out, very few of those meetings are actually broadcast live on TV. And by putting them online, we create a new accessibility for people who maybe don't have the will or the means to come and appear at a meeting at night, in the dark, in the winter, but can easily participate electronically. So I feel like this is actually a more modern and accessible approach, and I'm happy to see that we're going to be adopting it. I have learned through my work with the Michigan Municipal League and the Michigan Association of Planning about the uses of Zoom webinars. And I think that's going to be a good solution to the empowering our committees to do their work with the training and preparation that the city manager has brought to us. And I thank him. Great minds think alike. I thank him for bringing this to us, bringing this solution to us in such a timely way.
Thank you, Commissioner Douglas. Commissioner Perush.
Thank you, Mayor, but my question was already answered, so I don't need to continue. Thanks.
Perfect. Any other discussion? Commissioner Colo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Brake, we had another email on this earlier today, and I'm not going to change the proposal as is, but I think you have administrative authority kind to set up how meetings are ran. And I think the commission at the time set up a really nice procedure of you have your camera on when you're a board member talking, we do roll call votes. And I think administratively that might be a change you want to ensure that all boards and committees, just so that it's uniform, especially on a Zoom platform, it's easy to talk over each other. Votes get a little confusing sometimes. So I think that might be a best practice and something you're completely empowered to do, I would think.
Point well taken. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. We'll call for the vote. Commissioner Douglas,
Yes.
Commissioner Macy,
Yes.
Commissioner Dubak,
Yes.
Commissioner Lavasser,
Yes.
Commissioner Prush,
Yes.
Commissioner Colo,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay. All right. Back in business. All right. This brings us to item 16, which was formerly or published as item 15 on the agenda. I'll leave it up to Commissioner Douglas and Mayor Pro Tem Perush and Commissioner Colo to see if they wish to discuss this item. Commissioner Douglas?
No, I have nothing further to add. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, I'm seeing a lot of shaking heads. Wow, Commissioner Perush and Commissioner Colo were on the exact same head shake sync. That was kind of crazy there. All right, so we will move on to our last agenda item. Unfortunately, discussion regarding City Attorney's Office. So Mr. Gillum or Mr. Brake, I'm going to hand this over to you guys to kind of coach us up on, maybe some of our next steps forward.
Well, let me jump in to start. I think I know everyone at the table tonight is aware, but for anybody who is watching the meeting that isn't aware, I will be leaving the city attorney's office the middle of November. And we'll have time to say thank yous and things like that, but just publicly just wanted to express thanks for all the support I've received over the years from the city commission, and how much I've appreciated the friendships that I've formed with all of you at the commission table. So in terms of the business of the city, this really raises questions, both long-term and short-term, as to how the commission wants to deal with filling the position of the city attorney. And I guess maybe we'll handle the long-term question first, and I'll yield the floor to Mr. Brake, and he can give you an update as to what he has been doing based upon the discussions that he and I have had. So.
Okay, well, thank you. So what we have been working on is, this is under the assumption that the commission wishes to continue the position as an in-house counsel. We have issued an RFP for executive recruiting with a due date of next Wednesday. So the intent is I believe it's November 9th, if I'm stating the date correctly, at the next city commission meeting, making a recommendation to secure the services of an executive recruiter and to set that process forward. With that being said, kind of pausing and to see if there's some interest or consideration, if there is a different delivery method. Potentially the service could be parceled out to a private firm. We are recommending that, at least in the interim, of a firm to handle the role of city attorney while we secure the services. So there's many moving parts to this, but assuming that we keep the continuity of this as an in-house legal counsel, moving that forward with securing the executive recruiter, given that in our human resources department, we're short a few staff, and this is a very important position. So my recommendation to you, with the experience that we all collectively shared, me as an applicant, as well as when you hired me as your city manager, using an executive recruiter that can tap into knowing the applicants that are out there, and potentially we could use the services of a firm that has done a similar type of recruitment, and they can give you an indicator of the caliber of applicants that are out there. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a nationwide search. However, more than likely it would be candidates that have either worked here previously in the general vicinity or have direct experience, say like in Oakland County, for instance. So to let you know that that's with the wheels in motion that have been put in place, then I'll refer back to Mr. Gillum that we've had an initial conversation with a firm that the city has a direct relationship with, that is used as the interim counsel previously, as well as that has covered insurance claims through the Michigan Municipal Risk Management Association, otherwise known as MMRMA. So that's that firm that the city has that previous working relationship and could provide some continuity while we go through this transition. So I'll toss this back to Dave to continue on, and as far as the presentation for your consideration. So.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. And the firm that Paul is talking about is Rosati, Schultz, Japik, and Amps Buchler in Farmington Hills. I think everybody is probably aware, but as Paul has indicated, back in 2016, when the City Commission was considering its options as to what to do going forward with the City Attorney's Office. And before I was brought back into the in-house position, it was the Rosati law firm that the city had hired to act as the interim city attorney, pending the resolution of that process. In addition to that, last summer, when I was named acting city manager or interim city manager, along with my city attorney duties, you'll recall that we had discussion, and I had indicated that there was a potential that if legal issues came up during the period of time that that I was the interim city manager, that we might have to reach outside for help on those legal issues, because I wasn't going to be able to devote 100% of my time to both of the two jobs. So although we were fortunate in the sense that we were able to navigate the legal waters pretty smoothly during that period of time, we didn't have any major issues. But it was the Rosati firm that I had reached out to, and they had agreed to basically be on standby to help us out with any issues that came up during that period of time. In addition to that, earlier this year, when an issue arose with Commissioner Gibbs, and I had a conflict in that particular matter, and in fact my entire office did, it wasn't a matter that any of the attorneys in my office could handle. When I found out that that the Rosati firm was one of the firms that appeared regularly in the particular district court where that matter was taking place, it was the Rosati firm that I brought on board to handle that matter for us, which they did expeditiously and efficiently. In addition, as Paul has indicated, they are one of the firms that regularly handles litigation for us through the MMRMA. So it's a firm that that we know, that knows us, that does, in my opinion, really outstanding legal work. And as I indicated in the conversation that Paul and I had with 3 of the members of their staff last week, I will feel a lot more comfortable walking out the door if I know that the city is in good hands legally, and if they're on board, I will feel very comfortable when the time comes. So we've had preliminary discussions with them. It's something they're interested in helping us out with. Again, I think it would be in the city's best interest. So Paul has indicated he's hoping to have something to bring back to you at your next meeting on the 9th regarding a search firm or an executive search for the in-house position. In addition, what I would expect to be able to bring back to you at that time is a proposed agreement with Rosati, Schultz, Jopek, and Ants Buchler for the firm to act as the interim city attorney while you go through the search process, which again, we're guesstimating will be probably, with the holidays come up, things like that, probably about a 4-month period, I would guess. So, so again, if you have different thoughts as to how the process should be proceeding, I mean, I understand that we could potentially send out an RFQ for interim city attorney services too, but this is only an interim position. I think time is of the essence here. I don't think we really have the time to do 2 searches, one for an interim city attorney, another for a search firm. And again, I can't think of a firm that will be better equipped to handle the city's legal work in the meantime until you make a final decision on what to do with the in-house position. So if your thoughts are any different, please let Paul and I know and we'll adjust our course, but that's where we're at right now. That's our game plan going forward. If you have questions, we'd be happy to try to answer those.
Mr. Perush.
First, in terms of the search firm for actually filling the full-time position eventually, I think that's the appropriate way to go. That's not a way that we have used in the past for filling the city attorney positions when there's been a vacancy, but I think in this instance, given the position that the city is in this time, I think that's the appropriate way to go. I think it's the professional way to go. I think it's the way to get the best pool of candidates. I'm presuming also that they're primarily going to be coming from Michigan, since municipal law is such a state law issue. So we're not doing a nationwide search for the most part. But I really do acknowledge that doing a search firm and doing a professional search is indeed the way to go this time. And secondly, I will reiterate what Dave Gillum said about the Rosati firm. Carol Rosati, who is the head of the firm, has had a long history with the city of Royal Oak. She did insurance defense for the city, has been doing it for decades. And in prior years, she was with a different firm as an associate. Now she has her own firm of very, very capable lawyers, and they do excellent work. And it's not only insurance defense, but all aspects of municipal law. And she's a tremendous attorney. I've known her for a long time. And she and her firm will give us very, very good, capable representation and work in this interim period. I'm delighted that they're willing to do it for a short period of time. It's not something that all legal firms would be interested in doing because it is for such a short period of time. So I'm gratified that they're willing to do it. And we're getting really quality work from them in this interim period. So I'm delighted that Carol and her firm are willing to do this. So I'm happy with the way the situation is progressing. Sad to see Mr. Gillum going, definitely. But I think the interim situation and the search is being conducted appropriately.
Thank you, Commissioner Perush. Anybody else? I mean, I'll just add my 2 cents. I think, you know, it certainly makes sense in such a short term to move with familiar resources to help, you know, have some sort of consistency, you know, post the departure of somebody who's been here and doing a good job for such a long time over a couple different periods. And I don't know that, you know, making a long drawn out process is going to either one, change our mind, or two, provide any sort of assurances or savings or anything like that to the city. I think we can deal with these matters, you know, especially some of the day-to-day stuff that we deal with, whether they be insurance claims or frivolous lawsuits. You know, they can add up pretty quickly if you don't have competent representation. So that doesn't bother me too much in that regard, especially in the short term. I do like the idea, you know, in the long run, you know, I've always struggled. I think our city, our size, can benefit from having outside counsel. You know, we're not quite big enough, we're not quite small enough. But at the same time, I feel like it's important to have somebody in-house to manage the lawyers, so to speak, and to manage the cases and to manage the people that are being subcontracted on our behalf to handle some of the issues, and to oversee their billing and to make sure that every day, when we wake up, that person is there, consistent, same face. You know what I mean? You're, instead of dealing with a contract, you're dealing with a team member, so to speak. And the relationship we've had with Mr. Gillum and his permanency and his focus and dedication to us has been, crucial to a lot of the things that we've been able to make happen here in our city to the benefit of our community. So, and I think finding that right person, the climate might be a little different now than it was, a number of years ago. So we might be able to get somebody that is, wanting a little bit more steady work and consistent work and a little bit of job security as well. So anybody else? Okay. So gentlemen, what do you need from us tonight?
So for our purposes, this is just to brief you, to, kind of do a check-in to let you know what our thought process is. We didn't want to get too far along, without briefing you. So really the decisions will be made at the November 9th meeting. So again, the contract for the interim services with the residing law firm, and then there'll be a staff recommendation to select an executive search firm and to talk about the timing of the recruitment and all the elements that normally a recruiter, when they're gathering information for the position profile, we can talk specifics about that, and perhaps if you want to form a subcommittee or however of looking at how we move this process forward. But this, I believe this will be Dave's last meeting, so it'll be important for us to come up with, all right, here's the plan moving forward. So from late November on, that we know exactly what will be occurring.
Okay. We've heard from two of the attorneys on this meeting already, and I understand there are two more. Any input from those other two? Commissioner Lavasser?
Well, I think that our executive team has put forth a good steps for us to take here.
Okay. Mr. Macy?
Since you asked, I have long thoughts on this subject that I'll share with all of you now.
I
No,
think we're getting set.
no, Commissioner Douglas gave me the no. I got the hook. So I just will say that I prefer to have an in-house attorney, and I really value Mr. Gillum and the contribution and how he's helped me as a commissioner over the past 3 years. And I believe that we can find someone else great. I think using the executive search committee is a good idea.
So, Mr. Gillum, you're partially responsible for Commissioner Macy. Interesting. I take back some of my compliments. No, I'm only kidding.
All the good parts, right? So
yeah, that's right. And I see your new employer didn't get the photoshopped images that we sent over. So we're still moving forward. All right.
yeah.
Okay. So November 9th, our next meeting, you guys are going to have some more, that's when we're going to have to make a decision. You look for some guidance. It sounds like you got it tonight. Sounds like you have a solid plan that doesn't seem to be objectionable to anybody here. So, but, everybody know here on November 9th, we got to make some decisions or we'll be attorneyless, which isn't an always good position to be in. So, it's going to be, make sure everybody attends, we get quorum, and that we are ready to make a decision one way or another and secure services, at least in the interim. All right. Anything else? All right. Well, if there's nothing better for the city of Royal Oak, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Commissioner Douglas moves to adjourn. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Perush. Discussion? All right, with none, I'll call for the vote. I'll start with Commissioner Colo.
Yes.
Commissioner Perush.
Yes.
Commissioner Lavasser.
Yes.
Commissioner Dubak,
Yes.
Commissioner Macy,
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas.
Yes.
And before I vote yes, I'm going to ask everyone to stay on for a minute because I totally forgot. And if City Clerk Hallis is still open to giving us an update on some of the election material, I had asked her if she wouldn't mind doing a update in the beginning of the meeting. And just with, I mean, Glenn Frey and everything else going on, I totally botched it. So I vote yes. We're adjourned, but I will turn to City Clerk Hallis if she can give us just a few updates on how everything's going with the election so far. City Clerk Hallis, do you mind unmuting? Sorry.
There we go. We are busy. We are super, super busy. Today we issued over 300 ballots in-house today. Right now we're at just over 26,000 ballots that we've issued. So far returned, we have just over 18,000, and outstanding, we have about 7,600 outstanding still. So we're about 29% we're still waiting on. Just a reminder, utilize the drop boxes. Do not mail your ballot at this point. I would suggest, please, we have 3 drop boxes around City Hall. We have a drop box inside City Hall. We also have special hours this week. Tomorrow we're open from 7:30 to, or I'm sorry, from 4:30 to 7:30. Along with the normal 8 to 3 hours. Thursday, we're open an additional evening hours from 4:30 to 7:30. Friday, we're open from 9 to 5. Saturday, we're open from 7 to 3. And it's just been a team effort. My staff, and they've been working since September, long hours, long weekends, and we're ready to have a successful election and also to get a break. So
I bet. And we know how busy you are, and we know come election night, you're going to be scanning an amazing number of ballots throughout the night, which is a good thing. That is a true testament to the strength of our democracy. The sheer number of people that are voting and that are taking an interest in you know, not just the future of our nation, but of local activities as well. So kudos to you and the team and to everybody else helping out. And I imagine you guys got a strong plan for the polls on election day.
yes, we have plenty of election workers. We've already had all of our trainings for our election inspectors and our chairs. Yes, so we feel confident for Tuesday.
Perfect. Well, great job. And we're technically adjourned. And so anyone have any questions for City Clerk Hallis, Commissioner Macy?
So I know that the number of return ballots is way more than absentee ballots we've had in the past. I wonder if you can tell me how many ballots, like of the issued, how that compares to the number of votes we get period in previous elections.
The last November presidential that we had, we were about 71% total. So we're already at 52%. So.
Commissioner Colo.
So I just want to say thank you really quick, because I've seen you all over the place on different podcasts and talking to any group that wants to talk to you. So thank you for getting out there and just getting information out. I mean, you know, it's clear that your goal is to have people vote, and that's awesome. So thank you for, you know, helping advance democracy.
And I can tell you, it's not just collecting the ballots, they're checking them, scanning them, updating systems to let people know their ballot's been received, checking signatures to make sure that, you know, everything's validated and verified that it's the person's ballot. I mean, it's not just the volume, it's the integrity that our clerk's office is bringing to our election that is also important to highlight. They do an excellent job, and we will be 100% confident in results in Royal Oak come election day. So thank you for your efforts.
Thanks.
All right, and speaking of a thank you to all the residents that, you know, kept with us this evening. Thank you to staff for all the preparations you make. Special thanks to Ms. Schwinger for all her efforts keeping the Zoom alive with very few technical difficulties, and to Richard as well for his efforts on WROK. We'll see you again on November 9th, and thank you for tuning in. Thank you everyone for taking part tonight, and be safe, and we'll see you soon.